Chapter 154. Early in the morning, the Imperial Guards came to the academy to arrest Feng Yan, but were met with Feng Yan's resistance. In the end, the matter was blown out of proportion and even alerted Lian Guangzhu, who supported Feng Yan and chased the Imperial Guards out of the academy. The Imperial Guards coming to arrest Feng Yan was either the Third Imperial Prince's order or Lady Yan's complaint. Yesterday, Feng Yan had greatly offended both of them. Yet Feng Yan was actually so daring as to resist arrest, and Lian Guangzhu actually supported him. This was really a huge shock, and no one could believe it. Where did Feng Yan's courage come from? And why did Lian Guangzhu protect him so much that he was willing to go against the imperial family? Feng Yan did not say, and neither did Lian Guangzhu. Everyone could only guess. Could it be that Feng Yan was Lian Guangzhu's illegitimate son? In just a little less than half a day's time, this kind of rumor had already spread like wildfire in the academy. After that, Feng Luo even issued an order to gather evidence of Ling Han's usual misdeeds. Anyone who provided evidence would be given a considerable reward. Lu Yutong and Li Xichen still did not know what had happened last night, and were both confused and furious. Could this Feng Luo be a cockroach? He's obviously just trash, yet he's always alive and kicking. Ling Han was also very speechless. He had obviously been expelled from the academy, but in the blink of an eye, he was taken back. That's because of Feng Yan, Lu Yutong said with a nod. Who did this guy latch onto that old man Lian is so protective of him? Ling Han asked in confusion. Even if he's an illegitimate son, he wouldn't be doted on like this. Lu Yutong and Li Xichen both rolled their eyes. Only Ling Han would dare to say such things about a powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier. Now Feng Luo says that he wants to gather evidence of your crimes. He's obviously trying to disgust you, Li Xichen said. Feng Luo was not a member of the bureaucracy, and the evidence he gathered could not be considered as evidence. He was only trying to disgust Ling Han and ruin his reputation. Ling Han rubbed his nose and said, "Come on, Feng Yan is still supporting me. Not only does he want to kill me, he even wants to ruin my reputation." Lu Yutong and Li Xichen both frowned. Now that Lian Guangzhu was protecting Feng Yan, even the Rain Emperor would have to give him some face. Thus, as long as Feng Yan did not openly violate the laws of the empire, such as killing someone in the imperial capital, he could completely do as he pleased. Actually, Ling Han could do it as well. There were two big shots of alchemy standing behind him, and in truth he was even more confident than Feng Yan. However, it was clear that Lian Guangzhu was not Feng Yan's trump card. Feng Yan's support should be outside of Rain Country. In the end, Ling Han said with certainty. The other party had said that he would even dare to kill Ling Han in front of everyone 3 months later. What did this mean? He didn't even care about the Rain Emperor. It was said that there was a powerful warrior of Flower Blossom tier standing guard in Rain Country. Since Feng Yan could ignore the Rain Country royalty, it meant that the power behind him was at least in Flower Blossom tier. There was no other person who could match this in Rain Country. Ling Han rubbed his chin. Should he go and get certified as an Earth-grade alchemist? If he had the halo of an Earth-grade alchemist, then not to mention Flower Blossom tier warriors, even spiritual infant tier warriors would have to be polite to him. However, the highest that could be certified in Rain Country was only a black-grade high-level alchemist, because there was no alchemist of a higher level than this, so there was no witness at all. A black-grade high-level alchemist is enough for now. I believe that even Flower Blossom tier warriors would have to give me some face, Ling Han thought to himself. If he had the halo of an alchemist to protect him, at least no one would dare to make a move against him openly. In this life, though, I don't want to walk the path of alchemy anymore. Who asked me to be too flashy? I've already gotten into big trouble at the poly tier. He sighed, but his face showed that he did not care. In his last life he was a powerful warrior of heaven tier, and in the last period of his life, he went to all kinds of dangerous historical sites. The dangers he encountered were all 100 times more serious than this, but didn't he still make it through? As for Feng Yan, he was only a small bump in his path of growth. Now the only things that could concern Ling Han were that mysterious black tower, Hunyou's spirit base that had transformed into a peerless beauty in her dantian and could actually open her eyes, and the third was what had happened to his 4 disciples. That Feng Luo is too despicable. He's obviously a despicable person. I'll go ask Master to step in and expel him. I don't believe that Master Lian will continue to accept him into the academy, Li Sichan said, unconvinced. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, no need, no need. I'm actually wondering what kind of tricks this pair of brothers will come up with. Feng Yan wanted to kill him, so there was no need for him to be polite. When he had accumulated enough power, he would be killed by both Feng Yan and his brother. Not only this pair of brothers, there was also Wu Bo. He ran to the Ling family and started a massacre, so how could he forgive him so easily? Additionally, there was also Xiang. It was time to deal with this old man. Ling Han walked towards Lu Yutong and asked, what kind of business does the Chan clan do? Clothing. Lu Yutong immediately answered. Obviously, she had also done her homework. Previously, she had not been able to deal with Xiang, which made her feel guilty. Help me do something. Open a ready-made clothing shop next to all the shops of the Chan clan, and sell them at a price lower than the cost, Ling Han said, as he took out a silver note and stuffed it into her hands. Lu Yutong immediately understood Ling Han's intention. He wanted to crush the Chan clan financially. The reason why Xiang had been able to succeed time and time again was because of the Chan clan's wealth, which allowed him to hire the Earth and Water faction to kidnap people for him. If he had no wealth, the Sun clan would only be able to protect his life. All right, I know what to do. She nodded and said, however, this could be a bottomless pit. Are you sure you want to expend it like this? Ling Han broke into a smile and said, don't worry, money is not a problem. For a high-level alchemist, money was naturally not a problem. He only needed to concoct some black-grade high-level medicinal pills, and it was guaranteed that he would be fought over. Lu Yutong was finally relieved. She still wanted to say something but suddenly sniffed and said, why is there the fragrance of women here? Oh, I've taken in 2 homeless girls, Ling Han said casually. And Lu Yutong and Li Sichan looked at each other, simultaneously showing vigilance. Where are they? The 2 girls asked at the same time. When did they become so tacit? Greetings to the 2 ladies. Lu Feng-er and her sister walked out side by side. With 4 great beauties gathered in one room, it seemed as if the room had become much brighter. The 4 girls chattered away, and Ling Han was really bored, so he walked out. Xiao Hunyo darted out from somewhere and hung onto his body, swinging around like a monkey. Play. The little girl shook Ling Han's arm. Her face filled with a pleading expression. All right, go play. Ling Han laughed loudly. He had just walked to the door, and when he was about to leave, he saw a young man walk over. When he saw him, he bowed and said, Zhuwuzhou greets master. Chapter 155. Impressive, truly impressive. Ling Han nodded continuously. According to the description of the sword technique, one must unleash 3,000 flashes of sword rain in order to be considered to have reached the level of great accomplishment. The several dozen flashes of sword rain I unleashed with my sword only managed to reach 1% of the level of great accomplishment. However, the might of each flashes of sword rain is equivalent to a full power attack from me. Even if I were to face it myself, I would have to use the blood-sucking origin gold to transform into a shield to block it. Otherwise, I would not be able to dispel it at all. With this sword technique alone, as long as I break through to the gushing spring tier, I would definitely be able to defeat Feng Yan in a single move. However, that guy should still have some trump cards up his sleeves. It won't be easy to kill him in an instant. Moreover, this sword technique uses up too much origin power. One strike is equivalent to a few dozen full power attacks. If it wasn't for the fact that the space in my dantian has expanded by about 100 times, I would not be able to withstand such a few attacks. The Sword Emperor is indeed a freak. This guy must have taken a spatial pill when he was young. Otherwise, even if he was in the gushing spring tier, he would not be able to withstand such exhaustion. If that's the case, then in my last life, aside from the Sword Emperor, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden also controlled endless fire of karma. She must have fused with a ball of strange fire or even more. The Setting Sun Saber Emperor obtained a treasured saber forged from blood-sucking origin gold, which is also incredibly shocking. There's also Ma Wei Yang, Zi Shuexian, and Na Lan Tuesday. These 3 people are not simple either. It seems like they all have some kind of secret treasure, and only my battle prowess is the weakest. Now that I think about it, their background should be very powerful, which is why they were able to step into heaven tier at such a young age. It's only because I relied on the power of alchemical pills that I managed to surpass them even though I started later. This stream of water in the vast land seems to be much deeper than what I've seen. Forget it, 10,000 years have already passed. These guys should return to dust and dust to dust. I can't be bothered to think about it. Ling Han recovered his origin power, and once again began to cultivate the second style of black origin sword arts. 10,000 techniques returned to 1. This was a powerful move, and required a certain amount of time to accumulate power. It was as if 10,000 attacks had been fused together into a single attack. In his last life, when Ling Han had obtained black origin sword arts, he had only skimmed through it. Because he had not thought of cultivating it at all, he naturally did not take it to heart. But now that he was studying it, he could not help but pale. Was this really a black-grade martial arts technique? One style could unleash 3,000 full power attacks, and the other style was fusing 10,000 attacks into a single attack. Its power was absolutely insane. Not to mention Earth-grade, even Heaven-grade martial arts techniques would not be this awesome. How could this be possible? If it was Earth-grade or Heaven-grade, then how could he cultivate it now? Body refining and origin gathering tiers could only cultivate yellow-grade martial arts techniques, while gushing spring tier and spiritual ocean tier could advance one step further and cultivate black-grade martial arts techniques. Spiritual pedestal tier could advance one step further and cultivate earth-grade martial arts techniques. Only by shedding one's mortal body and changing one's bones and advancing into the flower blossom tier would one have the right to peek into heaven-grade martial arts techniques. Since that was the case, it should be impossible for him to cultivate earth-grade martial arts techniques now, not to mention heaven-grade. However, he was in the heaven tier in his last life, and clearly knew the power of earth-grade and heaven-grade martial arts techniques. Naturally, he could conclude that the power of the 3 styles of black origin was definitely not black-grade. Ling Han thought back. No wonder the Sword Emperor had a sour expression as if his parents had died. He had originally thought that with the Sword Emperor's power at that time, he would not care about a black-grade sword technique at all. He had never thought that these 3 styles would be so terrifying. Then what about the 3rd style? Ling Han did not continue to cultivate 10,000 techniques returned to 1. Instead, he put all his effort into developing the 3rd style, and then he was shocked. The 3rd style was called Limit Break, and the amount of origin power it required was practically like an ocean. According to his calculations, even if he had reached the spiritual ocean tier, he would still need to accumulate power for at least a few hours to be able to unleash this style. This was definitely not meant to be used against enemies. A scene immediately appeared in Ling Han's mind. An ultimate elite faced a protective formation, raised his sword, and after a long time slashed out with his sword. A flash of sword light streaked past, and the entire formation was forcibly sliced into pieces. That's right, Limit Break was used to slash open the protective formation. In front of such a powerful move, even an ancient formation could possibly collapse, and the tens of thousands of living beings within it would be directly killed. This sword technique could no longer be measured by its grade. Ling Han propped his chin up with both hands, and revealed a pensive expression. In his last life, he had never fought with the other 6 heaven-tier elites, because he knew that his cultivation level had all been raised by alchemical pills, and his battle prowess was the weakest. Naturally, he could not be bothered to seek his own humiliation. However, the other 6 often fought with each other, fighting for the position of the strongest and the second strongest. Even if Nalan Tu Zishuesian and the others could only be ranked outside the top 3, they were able to exchange blows with the Sword Emperor and not die. In fact, they were not even heavily injured. Now that he thought about it, it was really terrifying. What kind of freaks were those 6 people at that time? Ling Han could not help but feel a little driven mad. In his last life, after he had reached the heaven tier, he had spent all his time on searching for a way to break through to the Shattering Void tier. Otherwise, if he had gone to investigate the background of those 6 people, he would not be so lost now. From the memory fragments of the blood-sucking origin gold, I could see a terrifying golden age of martial arts. And in a few decades or a few hundred years after my death, hundreds of heaven-tier elites appeared in the vast lands, which meant that I did not understand this world at all. Moreover, there was even a divine object like the Black Tower hidden here, and the little girl's spirit base was similarly astonishing. Interesting. Ling Han stood up, and once again began to cultivate 10,000 techniques returned to 1. This was a powerful technique that he could use against his enemies. If he was given enough time to accumulate power, then no matter how many trump cards Feng Yan had, he would still have the confidence to kill him with a single strike. This consumed too much origin power, and not long after, Ling Han once again sat down and began to swallow alchemical pills, absorbing spiritual qi to recover. Sword Emperor, oh Sword Emperor, though you have long since died, if your sect was still around, I would really like to find out what kind of place the Heaven Sword sect is, to actually have such a terrifying martial arts technique. He practiced and stopped, and a day's time passed very quickly. Ling Han's current focus was still mainly on increasing his cultivation level. Only by breaking through to the gushing spring tier would he be able to understand the secrets of the Black Tower. Thankfully, this would only require half a month's time. That's right, though he only had one large origin nucleus left. If he wanted to strengthen this origin nucleus to its limit, the amount of time he needed had increased by a whole 3 times. On the second day, Lu Yutong once again gracefully came. I'll tell you a piece of good news. Feng Yan has left the academy, and it seems that he has gone to seek some kind of spiritual medicine that would allow Feng Luo's arms to be as good as new, she said. Ling Han was astounded. Could it be that this Feng Luo was really born in the year of the cockroach? His arms have now been reattached. And they've been reattached, but they're not very flexible, so there's no way for him to exert any strength at all. That's why Feng Yan has gone to seek some spiritual medicine, Lu Yutong said. This elder brother of his was really a competent one. Pung pung pung. There was a series of knocks on the door. Hu Niu ran to open the door, and very soon, she returned with a person in tow. It was Zhu Wujiu. I broke through to Gushing Spring Tier 7 days ago, and have fulfilled my promise with you. But now that I am here, there is no way for me to become your follower. I can only repay you in my next life, Zhu Wujiu said. Why? Ling Han asked. I challenged Nangongji and destroyed his dantian. Not long after, the academy will capture me. Even if they do not sentence me to death, they will still destroy my cultivation, Zhu Wujiu said calmly, and there was not a single trace of fear or regret on his face. Chapter 156. What do you guys think? Is senior brother Feng Yan really Lord Lian's illegitimate son? In the female dormitory of Huyang Academy, a young girl with freckles on her face was currently asking the other 3 girls with a gossipy expression. If Ling Han was present, he would definitely recognize that one of the girls was Shen Zian. I'm guessing so. Otherwise, why would Lord Lian be so protective of him? He's going against the imperial family. A girl with 2 braids said. Not necessarily. Maybe he's the illegitimate son of an illegitimate son, another girl in green said. Shen Zian did not speak. Previously, when she was in Songyun College, she was the most talented, which made her very proud. But only after entering Huyang University did she realize that she was a frog at the bottom of a well. Any random genius here would not be weaker than her, and most of them were stronger than her. Moreover, her birth was lowly, so she naturally could not raise her head high in this academy where nobles gathered. In less than a month, all her pride had been worn away. What enmity does senior brother Feng have with that person called Ling Han that he actually asked his younger brother to gather information on his evil deeds and even gave him a reward? The girl in braids asked curiously. When Shen Zian heard this, her eyes suddenly lit up. Junior sister Shen, you came from Deyuan City, and senior brother Feng Yan and that Ling Han also came from Deyuan City. Do you know what enmity they had in the past? The freckled girl suddenly thought of something and asked Shen Zian. Shen Zian's pretty face darkened, and she said, Ling Han is an ignorant and incompetent, despicable and lowly servant. Do you know how he entered the academy? No. The 3 girls all shook their heads. He begged his father to exchange his life for it. Shen Zian smiled coldly. What, there's actually such a person? The 3 girls exclaimed in shock. Of course. Shen Zian poured dirty water on Ling Han. Have you heard of the Dark Demon Forest? And I've heard of it. That's an extremely dangerous place. Even spiritual pedestal tier elites don't dare to enter. The 3 girls nodded. I've heard that more than 100 years ago, a predecessor of the academy entered into the Dark Demon Forest and lost a precious treasure inside. Thus, Ling Han's father came to an agreement with the academy. He would enter into the dark demon forest to retrieve that precious treasure, and Ling Han would be able to enter into Huyang Academy, Shan Ziyan said. This person is too evil. How unfilial. The freckled girl and the other two shook their heads. He was simply a scumbag. For the sake of entering the academy, he actually let his father take such a risk. Shan Ziyan sneered. Rumors were the most marketable. Within a few days, Ling Han would become a rat that everyone wanted to beat up. She hated Ling Han. She had hated him ever since they got engaged. However, after Ling Han's rise, this hatred turned into hatred. She definitely didn't want to be laughed at behind her back, saying that she was blind and missed out on a good son-in-law. Thus, she wanted Ling Han to lose all standing and reputation. Ling Han improved rapidly. After a mere 4 days, he broke through to the 7th layer of Poly. However, he wasn't the fastest. There was another guy that was even more monstrous. Hunyo. The little girl's spirit base was not only extremely strange, but also had an ability to absorb spiritual qi that wasn't inferior to Ling Han's. After she hatched from the egg, she inexplicably obtained a cultivation technique that completely matched the speed at which an immortal-grade spirit base absorbed spiritual qi. Just from this alone, she wasn't slower than Ling Han. More importantly, she could still eat. The ability to refine what she ate into origin power didn't disappear with the awakening of the spirit base. On the contrary, it became even stronger. Thus, in a short 5 days, the little girl reached the 9th layer of body refining tier. It was unknown if the barrier of a large tier could restrain her. After all, this involved comprehension of the tier, and wasn't something that could be done with power alone. However, this wasn't a problem at all. 1 day passed, and Hunyo quietly advanced into Poly tier. It was as easy as drinking water. Ling Han didn't know what to say anymore. Could it be that Hunyo was also the reincarnation of some great elite? That wasn't impossible. The spirit base in the little girl's dantian was really too strange. Not only did it transform into a peerless beauty, it could even open its eyes and almost cut his soul. And in the eyes of the Lu sisters, these two people, one big and one small, were undoubtedly monsters. They had seen how their cultivation had soared so rapidly in a short few days, which gave them a feeling that it was unreal. Indeed, in comparison, their cultivation was higher, but it had to be known that this was after exhausting all the resources of the Falling Flower Palace, which allowed them to reach high-level Gushing Spring tier before the age of 20. However, after that, they would have to rely on their own hard work and talent. But this level of freakishness, one big and one small, was obviously still able to maintain it. This was what was truly frightening. Ling Han wanted to refer to Hunyo's cultivation technique, but the little girl couldn't explain it no matter how hard she tried. She only said that this cultivation technique seemed to be instinctive to her, and would circulate naturally. There was no need for her to understand it, nor was she able to repeat it. On the other hand, thanks to Shan Ziyan, Ling Han's reputation as a despicable son had spread throughout the academy. Everyone thought that Ling Han had forced his father to sell his life to enter the academy, and could not help but look down on him. In this way, Feng Luo had become a righteous man, and the matter of Wei He-li's expulsion was even brought up again, suggesting that a retrial should be carried out. Perhaps they had wrongly accused Wei He-lu. What should we do? Everyone is saying bad things about you now. Lu Yutong came over. When she mentioned the rumors, she was naturally gritting her teeth. Anyone who came from Deyuan City would naturally know that Ling Han had obtained first place in the tournament to enter the academy. But now the rumors were so powerful that no one believed the truth. The innocent will know their innocence. If others want to gossip, then let them. If they dare to say it in front of me, I will knock all their teeth out, Ling Han said, completely unconcerned. As a former powerful warrior of Heaven tier, how could he possibly take other people's techniques to heart? When he displayed his invincible martial prowess, he would naturally be able to suppress all the rumors. Knock, knock, knock. It was at this moment that they heard a knock on the door. Because the door was not closed, a beautiful face peeked in and asked, "Is young Master Ling here?" Lu Yutong turned her head to look, and could not help but reveal a strange expression. Ling Han's luck with women was a little too strong. He had only entered the imperial city for a few days, and he had already gotten to know so many beautiful women. Ling Han also took a look, and could not help but smile as he said, "Silly little girl, why are you looking for me?" That beautiful woman was Yun Shuang. She had originally been in a good mood, but when she heard Ling Han's words, she immediately exploded in anger. She said in exasperation, "Madam invites you to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion to thank you in person." "Oh, when?" Ling Han asked. "If young Master Ling has nothing important to do today, then let's do it tonight." "All right." Ling Han nodded. He indeed had nothing important to do. Oh. Chapter 157. I'll go with you, Lu Yutong immediately said. She naturally knew what kind of place the Cherishing Flower Pavilion was. A gold-squandering den for men, so how could she not worry? Yun Shuang finally glanced at Lu Yutong, bowed slightly, and said, "So it's a noble daughter of the Lu family. Shuang has been rude." Lu Yutong looked slightly awkward because she did not recognize Yun Shuang, but in her opinion, women from the Cherishing Flower Pavilion were naturally filthy beyond compare, and she did not bother to recognize them. Moreover, the other party was going to drag Ling Han to that kind of place to play, which naturally made her even more displeased. Thus, she only nodded reservedly, and did not even say a word of courtesy. Yun Shuang could not help but show a hint of anger. She was the adopted daughter of Lady Yan, and did not need to entertain guests, so she similarly had a high self-esteem. However, in front of a noble daughter like Lu Yutong, she indeed could not escape being born into a brothel, which made her feel very uncomfortable. Lady Yan said that only young Master Ling is invited. She did not directly confront Lu Yutong, and only used Lady Yan's words to tactfully decline. "Nyo wants to go too." Hu Nyo scurried out and hung onto Ling Han's arm, looking like a spoiled child. "Yes, we'll all go," Lu Yutong emphasized. With Hu Nyo here, even if Ling Han's lust soared to the heavens, he could only behave. Let them go together. Ling Han picked up Hu Nyo. "The older one is willing to listen, but even I can't handle the younger one." Hu Nyo's eyes lit up and she said, meet. Whether Hu Nyo went or not, Yun Shuang did not care. She was displeased with Lu Yutong, but since Ling Han said so, she could only say, "Then please come to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion tonight for a chat." Shuang will take her leave. After she left, Lu Yutong's expression became slightly better. Ling Han could not help but smile and said, "My little female attendant, are you jealous?" Who's jealous?" Lu Yutong's pretty face immediately turned bright red. She was as beautiful as a flower and incomparably alluring. Ling Han laughed heartily and changed the topic. "How's the business of the clothing store?" "Very good, we've already snatched all of the Chun family's business. However, the Chun family will definitely not just sit there and wait for death. After this, they will either start a price war or send people to cause trouble at our shops." Lu Yutong's eyebrows furrowed slightly. After all, those shops did not have the Lu family's banner on them. Ling Han smiled and said, "There's no harm in starting a price war. I'm not thinking of making money in the first place. If they dare to send someone to cause trouble, it'll give me a good reason to go to their door and make a move." Lu Yutong suddenly understood. Indeed, his own store was destroyed, and as the owner, Ling Han naturally had a good reason to make a move. However, the Chun family probably won't make a move themselves. They'll ask someone from the Earth and Water faction. Earth and Water faction? A cold light flashed in Ling Han's eyes. This faction would even do something like snatching a little girl, so it was obvious how dirty they were. He already had the thought of flattening them. "I reckon that the Chun family won't use violence first, but will also start a price war to see if they can make us retreat. I'll take advantage of this time to deal with the Earth and Water faction first." Lu Yutong could not help but look worried, and said, "The Earth and Water faction have colluded with the 8 great clans. If you make a move against the Earth and Water faction, it may attract the 8 great clans to interfere." Ling Han was extremely displeased. In his last life, when had there ever been a time where his hands and feet were tied like this? But who asked him to only have the power of element gathering tier now? Even in a small place like Rain Country, he couldn't dominate? "I'll go to Tianyi first. I'm spending money like water now, so I have to earn some money," he said after some thought. Go to Tianyi to earn money? Lu Yutong revealed a strange expression. Who would go to Tianyi not to spend money? But this guy actually had the idea of earning money in Tianyi. But when she thought of Ling Han's terrifying alchemy ability, it seemed reasonable. Let's go. Since someone's treating tonight, we'll eat outside for lunch as well. Ling Han carried Hunyou out. What about the two in the house? Lu Yutong chased after them. She was referring to the Lu sisters. Oh, it's good enough that you took them in, and you still want me to take care of them. Cook 3 meals a day, Ling Han said with a smile. An enchanting smile instantly blossomed on Lu Yutong's face. Obviously, Ling Han had no interest in the Lu sisters at all. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't act like this. This discovery made her very happy, and even she herself felt it was strange. Bringing 2 beauties, one big and one small, with him, Ling Han arrived at Tianyi. Young Master Han had just stepped onto the long and wide flight of steps when he saw an old man in his 60s coincidentally walking over. When he saw Ling Han, the old man quickly walked over and called out in a very respectful tone. There were 4 other people behind the old man, and they were all his disciples. When they saw this, they all looked indescribably shocked. This was Grandmaster Yuanchu Yuan, a genuine black-grade middle-level alchemist. He was only 1 step away from being on equal footing with the 2 big bosses of alchemy in Rain Country. But Yuanchu couldn't help but bend his back, and his face was filled with undisguised reverence. That was not an act at all, but respect that came from the bottom of his heart. If Ling Han was Wu Songlin or Fu Yuanshang, then it wouldn't be strange. Alchemy was the same as martial art. The difference of 1 cultivation level was like the difference between heaven and earth, but he was only a young brat, so how could they not be stunned? Damn it, they all rubbed their eyes hard, not daring to believe it. You are... Ling Han only recognized the other as one of the alchemists who had observed his alchemy techniques that day. But who exactly was he didn't know. Who? Everyone fainted. Grandmaster Yuanchu, your face is just short of sticking to your shoes, and you don't even know who Grandmaster Yuanchu is? This is really completely speechless. I am Yuanchu. Some time ago, I observed young Master Han concoct alchemical pills and learned a lot. However, I was immersed in young Master Han's techniques that day, and actually did not know when young Master Han would leave. This is really a sin, and I hope young Master Han will forgive me, young Master Han said in fear and trepidation. Everyone was shocked once again. With Grandmaster Yuanchu's status, he actually apologized for not seeing Ling Han off. What kind of background did this brat have? It was practically terrifying. Ling Han smiled and said, no matter. Young Master Han, are you here to concoct alchemical pills again today? Yuanchu asked, filled with anticipation. He had an inexplicable confidence that as long as Ling Han concocted alchemical pills a few more times, he would definitely be able to break through to become a black-grade high-level alchemist. Thus, he was naturally very proactive. Can this old man calculate? Ling Han smiled and said, that's right, I'm here to concoct an alchemical pill. Please. Yuanchu hurriedly invited him in respectfully. Under Yuanchu's respectful welcome, Ling Han entered the main hall. Young Master Han. Xiaoying immediately came forward, her face filled with pleasant surprise. Now that she had been promoted to a minor manager, she originally did not have to wait at the entrance to receive guests, but she had always wanted to see Ling Han again. Thus she had been doing this for the past few days, and finally her wish had been fulfilled. Ling Han smiled and nodded at the other party, causing the corners of Lu Yutong's lips to curl up uncontrollably. This guy was really merciful in all aspects. Chapter 158. Ling Han only nodded at Xiaoying, and came to the 3rd floor of the palace hall with Yuanchu's company. This was the place where high-level alchemists concocted pills and rested. How about this, we won't limit the number of people today. I'll concoct pills and you guys can observe. Everyone will just have to reluctantly accept 1,000,000 silver coins, Ling Han said to Yuanchu. Yuanchu's 4 disciples once again spluttered. 1,000,000 silver coins for concocting pills in one go, were you robbing them? Even the corners of Lu Yutong's mouth twitched. 1,000,000 silver coins for one go, and even if there were only 10 people each time, then concocting pills for one go would net them 10,000,000 silver coins, and 10 times would be 100 million. 100 million. The Lu clan had a large business and their monthly income was definitely more than 100 million silver coins, but in terms of pure profit it was definitely not that much and it was far from that much. A single person could rival an entire clan. No wonder Ling Han was so confident that he could destroy the Chang clan's finances. It was too easy for him to earn money. However, would Yuan Shu agree? Really? Yuan Shu's eyes widened, and he looked pleasantly surprised. Only 1,000,000 silver coins. Damn! Lu Yutong and his 4 disciples felt like they were going to faint. Yuan Shu actually thought that 1,000,000 silver coins was too cheap? Of course, if Ling Han concocted pills a few more times, he would be able to break through. How could a few million silver coins compare? Moreover, as long as he broke through, he would be able to concoct even higher grade alchemical pills. And with every increase in grade of alchemical pills, the price would also soar exponentially. It could be said that every high-level alchemist was wealthy enough to rival an entire nation. However, most alchemists were not misers, and would use this huge sum of money to improve their own alchemy skills. But as long as they reached black grade, which alchemists did not have a few tens of millions in assets, 1,000,000 was really nothing. Ling Han did not care about money at all. This was only a worldly thing, and when one's ability advanced into the flower blossom tier, money could not buy the cultivation resources they needed. They would have to barter for what they needed. Of course, money was still useful now. Otherwise, Ling Han wouldn't have asked for a viewing fee. Yuan Shu immediately went to call for people, and very quickly, all the black-grade alchemists arrived one after another. However, there were pitifully few yellow-grade alchemists. There were only Li Xichan, Qi Zhantai, and a few others, and finally Fu Yuansheng. Old Fu, you came at the right time. Help me collect the money, Ling Han said bluntly. This time Yuan Shu's 4 disciples really fainted. That was Fu Yuansheng, one of the 2 big shots of alchemy in Rain Country. Yet in Ling Han's mouth, he had become Old Fu. Fu Yuansheng, however, immediately came forward with a face full of smiles. To be able to serve a grandmaster of alchemy, that was his honor. Speaking of which alchemist here had not started out as an alchemy apprentice, and had done quite a bit of work to assist others? Therefore, not only did the crowd not look down on him, they were full of envy. To be able to serve a grandmaster, it really makes people jealous. Everyone happily handed over the money. Only Li Xichan and Qi Zhantai were exempted. Black-grade alchemists really did not lack money. Today I will be concocting foundation-building pills. Everyone knows that this is a black-grade high-level alchemical pill, so I will take the opportunity to be certified as a black-grade high-level alchemist, Ling Han said. Foundation-building pill. When they heard Ling Han mention the 3 words, foundation-building pill, everyone looked astonished. There were many types of black-grade high-level alchemical pills, and the difficulty of concocting them naturally varied greatly. Normally they were divided into 4 categories: easy, difficult, extremely difficult, and almost impossible. The so-called almost impossible was actually a pill close to earth grade. Being able to concoct such an alchemical pill meant that one would definitely be able to break through to earth grade. Foundation-building pill was precisely the almost impossible to concoct. This kind of alchemical pill could help a spiritual ocean tier cultivator build his foundation and prepare for building his spiritual pedestal. It was one of the rarest alchemical pills for breaking through. The first was the difficulty of concocting it, and the second was the effectiveness of the completed pill, which allowed the foundation-building pill to become a pill close to earth grade. For a martial artist, there were 3 types of alchemical pills that were the most valuable. The first was to increase one's cultivation level, the second was to help one comprehend martial art, and the third was to break through. If these 3 types of alchemical pills were to be ranked, then it would be the other way around. Alchemical pills for breaking through were the most valuable, and also the rarest. Alchemical pills that could prolong one's life were not included, because only natural medicines could have such an effect. Concocting such pills would only have the opposite effect. Everyone here had heard of the foundation-building pill, but in a small place like Rain Country, no one could concoct it, including the 2 big bosses of alchemy. And if this kind of alchemical pill could be sold in large quantities, one could imagine how many powerful spiritual pedestal tier cultivators would appear in Rain Country. This could very possibly overturn the power structure of Rain Country. Just thinking about it made these people's scalps go numb. An alchemist changing the power structure of a country sounded like a dream. I want these ingredients, Ling Han said to Fu Yuansheng. The foundation-building pill was ranked close to earth grade because of its difficulty in concocting and its effects. But the ingredients required were not much different from normal black-grade high-level alchemical pills. Tianyi would definitely have them. As expected, Fu Yuansheng immediately nodded and waved his hand to have someone open up the storeroom to retrieve the ingredients that Ling Han needed. "Calculate how much is it?" Ling Han said with a smile. "How can we take young Master Han's money?" Fu Yuansheng hurriedly waved his hand. Yet Ling Han insisted, saying, "I must take it." Once he took the money, the foundation-building pill that was concocted would belong to him. How much were the ingredients worth? 1 million or 2 million could be used to form the pill. Don't think it's too expensive to bid for 10 million. It was guaranteed that there would be a lot of people fighting over it. Fu Yuansheng could only smile sheepishly. He wanted to take a completed pill and study it carefully. One had to know that the success rate of forming a close-to-earth grade alchemical pill was shockingly low. If a cauldron was filled with 10 ingredients, then it would be very good to have one completed pill. 2 was practically nature-defying. Black-grade high-level ingredients were still very expensive. A single cauldron of ingredients was worth as much as 3 million. If the cauldron exploded, then that would be burning up 3 million silver coins for nothing. But as long as he managed to concoct just one pill, then not only would he be able to break even, he would also be able to earn a huge profit. This was a high-level alchemical pill, and it was a rare type of high-level alchemical pill, so it was worth this price. Ling Han had completely come empty-handed. He had come empty-handed, and had earned 18 million just by selling the observation fee. Yet he had only paid 3 million now. And with his ability, what was a close-to-earth grade alchemical pill? Even if he could only concoct 3 pills, just thinking about it, the value would still be terrifyingly shocking. "Everyone, please be careful. I'm about to begin," Ling Han said. Because these people had all paid, he was also giving them a reminder. Everyone's eyes widened. Not only would they be able to observe the alchemy skills of a grandmaster, they would also be able to witness the birth of a cauldron of close-to-earth grade alchemical pill. Just thinking about it made their scalps go numb. Ling Han's expression gradually became serious. When it came to alchemy, he would never be careless. After taking in a deep breath, he suddenly began to move. Instantly, his movements were as smooth as flowing water. It was very pleasing to the eye, as if it was in accordance with some kind of natural law. Chapter 159. Ling Han saw a fragment of that great battle in the shards of the blood-sucking origin gold. What he could be sure of was that the giant of origin gold had definitely been defeated. In his previous thoughts, that giant should have been dismembered, with its shards scattered everywhere. But there was also another possibility. For example, that giant of origin gold had only been partially destroyed, and the majority of its body was still intact. If that was the case, then it would not be strange for the giant of origin gold to be suppressed in the mystery realm, and part of its shards appearing in Rain Country. Of course, the possibility of this was very small, pitifully small. But when he thought of how terrifying the giant of origin gold was, Ling Han still decided to go to the Devil Sky mystery realm. If that giant of origin gold was really suppressed below, then he definitely had to ensure that the seal was being strengthened and not being undone. So many years have already passed. Even a monster like the giant of origin gold should have died by now, right? Ling Han comforted himself like this. But for an existence like the giant of origin gold, even if it had really died of old age, its indestructible body would still be able to give birth to a second life. It was just that it would be a completely different person. No matter what, he definitely had to go to this Devil Sky mystery realm. "How do I enter the Devil Sky mystery realm?" he asked. "Very simple. After the mystery realm opens, teleportation doors will appear in various places, and after passing through, you will directly enter into the mystery realm," Lu Yutong said. She paused for a moment, then continued. "The reason why we know that the mystery realm has opened is because these doors have already appeared. This time, 3 doors have been discovered in Rain Country. The closest one to us is 300 miles east of the Imperial City," Li Sichan said. Ling Han nodded and asked, "In the Devil Sky mystery realm, aside from the blood zombies, are there any other dangers? The humans inside have all died, but there are still some demonic beasts, and they seem to be trapped inside, so there is no way to bring them out. Moreover, we are unable to stay inside for long, as we will be rejected. After a certain amount of time, we will be automatically expelled from the mystery realm, Lu Yutong answered. It is said that there is a terrifying existence in the depths of the mystery realm. That is a restricted area. So we will just be wandering around the outer perimeter. After such a long time, the mystery realm has finally reappeared, so there will definitely be a large amount of spirit grasses that have matured. That is our main target, Li Xichan said. Lu Yutong nodded in agreement. Cultivation techniques and martial arts techniques had been plundered from generation to generation, so it was practically impossible for them to be left behind. However, spirit grasses were different. They had harvested a batch this time, and the next time would be at least a few decades later. Especially this time, it had only reappeared after 300 years, so there would definitely be a large amount of spirit grasses waiting to be harvested. What about the restrictions for entering the mystery realm? Ling Han continued to ask. In short, the lower the cultivation level, the easier it is to pass through. However, it is not certain every time. Sometimes even spiritual pedestal tier warriors can enter, and sometimes even gushing spring tier warriors cannot pass through, Lu Yutong said, shaking her head. Ling Han thought for a moment, and felt that there was no harm in doing so. Firstly, he had not offended any powerful warriors of spiritual pedestal tier. Secondly, if even spiritual ocean tier warriors could enter, then he had Guangyuan by his side. Thirdly, if only those below gushing spring tier could enter, then he would not be afraid at all. Even if he encountered elites like Qin Yi or the eldest imperial prince, he would at least have the ability to protect his own life. Moreover, wasn't Qin Yi now his underling? Not long after, Huyang Academy made an announcement, ordering all the students to immediately set off and enter the Devil Sky Mystery Realm. The first priority was to head to the center hall to carry out the blood sacrifice. If there was not enough blood, then blood zombies would come out to wreak havoc in the world, and who knew how many people would die then? Very soon Qi Yongyi, Li Dongyu, Jin Wuji, Bailey Tingyun and the others all ran over to Ling Han's side. They were all from Deyuan City, so they naturally had to form a group and help each other. Brother Ling, your cultivation level. Qi Yongyi was the first to notice, and could not help but be greatly shocked. How did it drop to the first layer of element gathering tier? Jin Wuji and the others all sensed Ling Han's aura, and indeed it looked like he only had one origin nucleus. Expressions of disbelief also appeared on their faces. They had only heard of people being stuck at a certain level, unable to break through for a long time, but this was the first time they had seen someone's cultivation level actually drop so drastically. Ling Han laughed and naturally would not explain. He said, since everyone's here, let's set off. Qi Yongyi and the others also knew that Ling Han's awesomeness was actually in the field of alchemy. In Deyuan City, he had already made 3 black-grade alchemists bow down to him, and now he was even more awesome. Even black-grade middle-level alchemists had to kneel down and lick his boots. In this way, what did it matter whether Ling Han's cultivation level was higher or lower? They set off, and Ling Han even made a trip to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion to call Li Hao over. Only then did the group leave the Imperial City, heading east. On their way there were more and more people. The Devil Sky Mystery Realm was not only related to cultivation techniques, spirit herbs and other good things, but also required a large number of people to use blood sacrifices to prevent the blood zombie from coming into being. Thus, no matter what kind of ability one had, it was best to send in some fresh blood as a sacrifice. This was a matter of great importance at the national level, and the power of the imperial family had already been effectively mobilized, mobilizing personnel from various cities to advance towards the Devil Sky Mystery Realm. Half a day later, Ling Han and the others arrived at the location of the teleportation door. Rather than calling it a door, it would be better to call it a vertical whirlpool. There was a black halo spinning around it, and it was about 10 meters tall, looking very majestic. This teleportation door did not have a front or back, and no matter which side one jumped in from, the person would immediately disappear, as if they had been swallowed alive. Ling Han nodded internally. In his last life, he did not have such a method, and it would only work if he was an ultimate elite of Shattering Void tier. Some people had already entered impatiently, while others were still waiting outside, as if they wanted to form a group and wait for a large group of people to enter together. And before everyone entered, they would be branded with a mark and given a map. The mark represented the people of Rain Country, and the map was very simple, only marking the location of the central hall. The people of the 9 nations of the desolate north could all enter the mystery realm through the teleportation doors of various places, and it was not limited to the citizens of Rain Country. For example, Rain Country and Fire Country were bordered by each other, and conflicts would frequently erupt. In the past few thousand years, who knew how many people had died, and they had long since become mortal enemies. Once they met, they would definitely fight to the death. This mark was used to distinguish enemies, and was directly branded on the back of one's hand. It could last for close to a month, which was more or less enough. And this time, the suppression of the teleportation door was not particularly strong. Even spiritual ocean tier martial artists could enter, but spiritual pedestal tier martial artists could not. Ling Han. A voice that was gnashing his teeth in anger was heard, filled with endless resentment. Ling Han turned his head, and could not help but have a strange expression on his face. Feng Luo. Did this guy have the fate of a cockroach? He actually appeared again. Moreover, his 2 arms were indeed reattached, but they were obviously not as nimble as before. It was as if they had been forcibly glued onto his arms, and they were dangling on both sides of his body, which was very strange no matter how one looked at it. After all, it was already very good that his arms could be reattached, and if they were still as nimble as before, that was practically illogical. Chapter 160. A good story. 9 pills. How could this be? One had to understand that even if Ling Han had achieved a 100% success rate in concocting the foundation building pills without the slightest bit of wastage, the ingredients provided by Fu Yuansheng would only be enough to concoct 8 foundation building pills. Now, however, 9 had appeared. What kind of logic was that? He must have failed. Everyone, take it yourselves. Fu Yuansheng took out a pill and handed it to someone beside him. That person took it and hurriedly sniffed it, then finally moved closer to the source of the light. Finally, he revealed a shocked expression and said, "Though I am not talented and knowledgeable, I can be 100% sure that this is definitely a foundation-building pill." And what? The crowd asked. "And the quality seems to surpass 10 stars, the person said hesitantly. Pooh, everyone almost fainted. They were filled with 120 disbelief. Theoretically, a black-grade high-level alchemist could concoct a black-grade high-level pill of 5 stars. A genius could reach 8 stars or so, and a rare genius could reach 10 stars. But 11 stars, 12 stars, this was impossible. Only a high-level alchemist could concoct a low-level pill. Could it be that Ling Han's alchemy ability had already reached Earth grade? Hiss! Give it to me. The crowd scrambled for it. Fu Yuansheng hurriedly stopped them. A foundation-building pill was close to Earth grade, so it was extremely precious. He had everyone line up, then inspected them one by one. It's really a foundation-building pill. This color, this smell, it's exactly the same as described in the alchemy manual. Indeed, this exquisite luster, the quality should surpass 10 stars. Heavens, I'm going crazy. There's actually such a thing. Everyone exclaimed. A 17-year-old youth actually concocted a close-to-Earth grade pill, and the quality even surpassed 10 stars. No, they had to consider Ling Han's terrifying success rate 100%. It's not 100%. He could only concoct 8 pills, so why are there 9? Someone thought of this. Fu Yuansheng inspected the remaining 8 foundation-building pills one by one, and said confidently, "I can use my reputation to guarantee that these foundation-building pills are not only successfully concocted, but their quality is not inferior to the one just now." Using the reputation of a black-grade high-level alchemist as a guarantee, there was definitely no problem. Genius, young Master Han is truly an absolute genius of alchemy. I understand now. It's because young Master Han had obtained the essence of the medicinal ingredients with a higher effect during the purification process just now that he was able to concoct 9 foundation-building pills. That's right. Our so-called limit of 8 pills is established on the basis of ordinary purification methods, but with young Master Han's method, it is indeed possible to refine one more pill. Heavens! Everyone hugged their heads and cried out in surprise. Their gazes towards Ling Han were filled with fanaticism, as if they were looking at an alchemy god. As a matter of fact, it was not far from the mark. Ling Han stood up and said, all right. I've received the money and the performance is over. It's time for me to go." He walked over to retrieve the pill and placed it into a jade bottle. Then, he turned to Fu Yuansheng and said, "When you're done with the verification, send the badge over." Fu Yuansheng hurriedly agreed. His expression was respectful, as if he was an alchemy apprentice who had just entered the sect. Ling Han left with Hu Niu. The little girl had long since fallen asleep in Lu Yutong's arms out of boredom. However, when they arrived at the restaurant and smelled the tempting aroma of the dishes, the little girl wrinkled her nose and immediately woke up. "Meat, meat," she said happily. After satisfying Hu Niu's huge appetite, the three of them went to the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. They did not plan to keep these 9 foundation-building pills for themselves, so they were naturally going to be sold. And this kind of rare alchemical pill belonged to the category of priceless pills, so how could they be sold cheaply at a clear price? Naturally, they had to go through an auction. In the Imperial City, there was no better auction house than the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. However, if they were to go through an auction, there would be a process of advertising, so they would not be able to earn back their money immediately. However, it was not a big deal. Ling Han had just earned over 10 million, which was enough to support his ready-made clothing stores to operate at a loss for a long period of time. "What would you two guests like to buy?" A shop assistant immediately came forward to greet them. Hu Niu was naturally ignored by him. Ling Han smiled and said, "I have some alchemical pills that I would like to auction. Please ask your appraiser to come and evaluate the price." Alchemical pills, hee. There was a man and a woman at the side. The man was about 40 years old, and his face was filled with disdain. He said, "What kind of alchemical pills can a youngster like you bring out? Don't make a fool of yourself here." He swept a glance at Lu Yutong, and there was a look of amazement on his face. "This is Grandmaster Fan Dongping, a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist," the woman beside him immediately introduced. His looks were not bad, but the makeup on his face was a bit too heavy. The shop assistant was a bit embarrassed. It was the guests' freedom to choose what they wanted to auction off. As long as the item was appraised to be of a high grade, it could be auctioned off. Anyway, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion had a fixed commission. However, a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist was not someone he could afford to offend. He immediately clasped his hands towards Fan Dongping and said, "I'll go invite appraiser Ma over." Then he ran off like a wisp of smoke. Fan Dongping was very pleased with himself. He glanced at Lu Yutong from the corner of his eyes, hoping to see a shocked expression on her face. However, he was disappointed to see that this beauty, who was as cold as an ice mountain, did not show any change in her expression. The gaudy woman stared at Lu Yutong with jealousy. This woman was more beautiful than her, had more elegance than her, and most importantly, was younger than her. After a while, the shop assistant led a middle-aged man in his 40s over. His cultivation level was only in the 7th layer of poly, but his whole body exuded a faint scholarly aura, making one feel comfortable. "This is appraiser Ma Tiansheng," the shop assistant introduced. Ling Han did not mind and handed the pill bottle over to Ma Tiansheng, saying, "I'll have to trouble appraiser Ma to help me with this." "Let me do it." Fan Dongping suddenly reached out and snatched the pill bottle. Then he smiled at Ma Tiansheng and said, "I'm a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist. When it comes to the appraisal of alchemical pills, I should not be inferior to Brother Ma, right?" A look of displeasure flashed across Ma Tiansheng's face, but due to the other's identity as an alchemist, he did not flare up. He immediately nodded with a dark expression and said, "Please go ahead." Seeing this, Fan Dongping could not help but feel pleased. He was naturally purposely putting on a show to attract Lu Yutong's attention. However, he did not think that he was already so old, yet he still wanted to rob the cradle. He uncorked the bottle and with just a sniff, his expression immediately changed. Then he took a look inside and hurriedly capped the bottle, putting it directly into his pocket. Only then did he say to Ling Han, "Brat, this bottle of spirit-gathering pills is not worth much. Here, this is 10,000 silver coins. I'll do a good deed and help you collect it." Ling Han was shocked. He knew that Fan Dongping was very shameless, but he had not thought that he would be shameless to this extent. What was the difference between this and robbery? Ma Tiansheng did not know what alchemical pills were contained in the pill bottle, but seeing Fan Dongping's anxious expression, he knew it was not simple. Instantly, anger rose on his face and he said, "This is something that our customer has entrusted to our precious treasures pavilion for auction. Please hand it over to me to appraise." "AI, it's hard to be a good person. Take it." Fan Dongping took out a pill bottle from his pocket and threw it at Ma Tiansheng. Ling Han swept a glance over it and could not help but smile coldly, because the pill bottle had already been swapped. What great guts! Chapter 161. Ma Tiansheng took the pill bottle. He didn't look closely at Ling Han's original pill bottle, and naturally didn't know that Fan Dongping had swapped it. Opening it, he couldn't help but reveal an expression of displeasure. This was indeed a spirit-gathering pill, and its quality wasn't very good, only 5 or 6 stars. There was no point in auctioning it. "Young man, this is only a normal spirit-gathering pill. It doesn't have the right to be auctioned." Ma Tiansheng threw the pill bottle to Fan Dongping, a trace of anger on his face. He was actually auctioned off for a bottle of spirit-gathering pill, which made him very displeased. Lu Yutong already understood, and her gaze towards Fan Dongping carried a trace of killing intent. Fan Dongping, on the other hand, was immensely pleased. He didn't know that what he swapped was a foundation-building pill, but he could determine that it was at least a black-grade pill. Exchanging it for 10,000 silvers, he really made a profit. If he knew that it was a foundation-building pill, he probably wouldn't have dared to do such a thing because the implications were too great. A mere 16 or 17-year-old youth, so what if he knew that he swapped? What could he do to him, a middle-level yellow-grade alchemist? "Let's go," he said to the pretty girl beside him. After all, he had a guilty conscience, so he naturally had to leave this place first. Ling Han couldn't help but smile and said, "Daring to steal my things, you're quite daring." "I don't know what you're talking about, let's go." Fan Dongping's heart jumped. He'd swindled a bottle of black-grade pills. This was a windfall. "Can't leave," Ling Han said indifferently. "Humph, I'm a middle-level yellow-grade alchemist. Do you dare to stop me?" Fan Dongping said coldly, stepping forward. "Pa!" Ling Han reached out and grabbed Fan Dongping's wrist, smiling. "I'm not just stopping you. I'm also going to beat you up." "You dare!" Fan Dongping shouted. "Let go. Let go your sister." Ling Han's fist shot out, and with a paw it landed squarely on Fan Dongping's left eye. Instantly, the guy screamed in pain and covered his eye with one hand. When he released his hand, his eye had instantly turned pitch black. "Be bastards!" Fan Dongping cried out harshly. "You don't even care about the people from the spiritual treasure sect? Do you still want to do business here?" Hearing his words, Ma Tiansheng immediately revealed a troubled expression. Indeed, it was forbidden to cause trouble in the spiritual treasures pavilion. However, he didn't like Fan Dongping's character, which was why he didn't immediately stop him. However, now that Fan Dongping had said this, he naturally couldn't pretend that he didn't see anything. "Young man, let go immediately," he shouted at Ling Han. Pung 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 pung. Ling Han acted as if he hadn't heard anything, and continued to beat Fan Dongping. He actually dared to steal his things. How dare he? Ma Tiansheng revealed an angry expression. This young man actually dared to ignore his words, and even dared to attack in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. He was too audacious. He snorted and called out, "Men, capture this brat for me." Lu Yutong immediately took a step forward, and Hu Niu also revealed her ferocious nature, baring her teeth at Ma Tiansheng. Ling Han found a jade bottle from Fan Dongping's body. He was naturally aware of his own belongings, so he did not hesitate. He directly tossed it to Ma Tiansheng and said, "This is what I want to auction off." Ma Tiansheng sneered and said, "Making a move in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, and you still want to act as if nothing happened?" "Wrong, I only caught a thief, took back my lost things and gave him a beating," Ling Han said calmly, and glanced at Ma Tiansheng. His eyes filled with dignity. Ma Tiansheng's heart tightened. It was as if Ling Han's gaze could penetrate the depths of his soul, causing his whole body to tremble. He couldn't help but open the jade bottle, but it was only for an instant before he revealed a shocked expression. As an appraiser, he naturally didn't know how to concoct pills, but he was very familiar with alchemical pills because this was his job. Foundation building pill." Ma Tiansheng immediately exclaimed, an indescribable shock on his face. In that instant, He believed that Ling Han's words were not false. Previously, Fan Dongping had definitely switched the pills and tampered with them. Otherwise, with his mere status as a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist, how could he possibly possess foundation-building pills? At least you have some good eyesight. Ling Han nodded. Foundation-building pills definitely didn't appear in Rain Country, but this person was able to recognize foundation-building pills with a single glance, so he could be considered to have some knowledge. Ma Tianxiang couldn't be bothered with Ling Han at the moment. He poured out a foundation-building pill and carefully evaluated its quality. Ling Han smiled calmly. Since that was the case, then he'd just go back to his own business. He stretched out a foot and stepped on Fan Dongping's face, and said with a smile, "How dare you, even daring to steal my things? Brat, you're dead." Fan Dongping said sternly, "I'm an alchemist, and you actually dared to injure me. This is a crime punishable by death. Moreover, you even stole my alchemical pills, so that's an additional crime. You really are unrepentant." Ling Han shook his head and said to Lu Yutong, "According to the laws of Rain Country, how much money would someone like him have to steal to be sentenced to death? The crime of theft could be serious or it could not be serious. It depended on the amount and of course the person. For a poor commoner to steal 10 silver coins was a serious crime, but for a rich person, stealing 10 silver coins would only cause them to be looked down upon by others. For Fan Dongping, who was a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist, to be sentenced to death for the crime of theft, the amount of money would definitely be very high." Lu Yutong thought for a moment, then said, "At least 10 million. Ling Han said to Ma Tianxiang, "Are these foundation-building pills worth 10 million? Ma Tianxiang instantly glared angrily at Ling Han. What kind of joke was this? These were foundation-building pills and one pill was worth at least 10 million. Do you have any common sense? But when he remembered that these foundation-building pills belonged to Ling Han, his aura instantly softened, and he said, "There are a total of 9 foundation-building pills here. If they were auctioned, they would be worth at least 100 million silver coins." 100 million silver coins. Fan Dongping instantly felt like he was going to faint, and he felt an incomparable chill. To be able to take out an auction item worth 100 million silver coins, how could Ling Han be an ordinary person? But if he was really arrested for the crime of theft, putting aside the fact that he would be humiliated, the huge sum of 100 million silver coins was definitely enough to sentence him to death. At the side, the beautiful woman was already trembling, and quietly retreated, obviously wanting to draw a clear line between herself and Fan Dongping. "No, these pills are mine. Fan Dongping could only stubbornly refuse to let go, or else he would really be done for. "Are you an idiot?" Ling Han kicked him. "A stupid pig like you can actually concoct alchemical pills that are close to earth grade. You yourself are an idiot, but do you think others are idiots as well?" Fan Dongping's face was deathly pale. He knew that he had poked a hornet's nest this time. Even the 2 big bosses of alchemy of Rain Country might not be able to concoct alchemical pills that were close to earth grade, so the background of this young man was definitely terrifying. "Lord Ma." 3 guards had made a big commotion here, and they quickly walked over, looking at Ma Tianxiang with questioning eyes. "Take this person down," Ma Tianxiang said coldly. "Make a report to the Imperial Guards. There is a thief here." "Yes, Lord Ma." The 3 guards immediately dragged Fan Dongping, who was like a dead dog, away. Chapter 162. "May I ask how I should address you, young master?" Ma Tianxiang was all smiles. His previous bad impression of Ling Han was naturally swept clean. This was a wealthy guest that could produce alchemical pills that were close to earth grade. In the whole of Rain Country, was there another person like him? Definitely not. "Ling Han, you can just call me Young Master Han," Ling Han said. Ma Tianxiang could not help but wipe off his sweat. He did not want to call a young man Young Master at all, but the latter was indeed an important guest. If he offended Ling Han and caused him to give up on the idea of holding an auction here, then he would have to bear the consequences. "Young Master Han." He could only call out and said, "Please come with me. I'll help Young Master Han register." "All right." Ling Han nodded in agreement. The news that 9 alchemical pills that were close to earth grade appeared in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion quickly spread to the higher-ups. An old man in embroidered robes appeared to receive Ling Han, and said, I am the third elder of this pavilion. My surname is Jia Bo Yun. Senior Jia. Ling Han clasped his hands in greeting. The other party was a powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier, so he was worthy of this greeting. Young friend, do you plan to auction these foundation building pills? Or directly sell them to our pavilion? Jia Bo Yun asked. Ling Han smiled slightly and said auction. This kind of alchemical pill that could help one breakthrough was naturally auctioned to maximize its value. Jia Bo Yun looked slightly disappointed. If he directly sold them to the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, then they would only be able to auction one foundation building pill every few years. Firstly, it would boost the reputation of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, and secondly, it would be more valuable when it was rare, so they would be able to maximize the value of these 9 foundation building pills. Unfortunately, this brat was not that stupid. However, these 9 foundation building pills would definitely be auctioned off for an astronomical sum. Just the processing fee alone would be enough for them to earn a lot. Young friend, if you entrust our pavilion to auction, the usual fee is 15 points. However, the value of the foundation building pills is too high, so I can make the decision to lower it to 14 points. How about that? Jia Bo Yun said with a smile. How sinister having to draw so much. On the side, Lu Yutong curled her lips. 9 foundation building dawn were worth more than 100 million yuan, and these 14 dawn were worth more than 10 million yuan, which was more than a month's net income of the Lu family. However, Jia Bo Yun was generous enough to give away at least 1 million yuan of profit. Of course, this was because the price of the foundation establishment pill was too high. Sure. Ling Han nodded. He had never valued money. Jia Bo Yun laughed and continued, if we want to sell these 9 foundation building pills for a good price, it would be best to auction them off in several batches. If little friend is not in a rush to use money, it would be better to take your time. Because the higher the auction price of the foundation establishment pills, the higher the income of the Spiritual Treasures Pavilion. Therefore, Jia Bo Yun naturally hoped to proceed with the best plan. Ling Han shook his head and said, auction them all at once. Jia Bo Yun was startled and could only sigh. Who asked this to be someone else's property? Even if he was as strong as a spiritual pedestal tier elite, he could only offer suggestions. To Ling Han, foundation building pills were something that he could easily concoct, so he naturally would not care whether the auction price was higher or higher. In any case, it would definitely be a sky-high price. At most, he would concoct some other alchemical pills that were close to Earth grade in a few days' time, and he would still be able to earn some money. Alright, this is a letter. When the time comes, little friend can use this to collect the money, or you can entrust it to someone else. But take note, if you lose it, you must report the loss immediately. Otherwise, if someone mistakenly collects the money, even I will be powerless, Jia Bo Yun reminded. This token was divided into 2 parts, with each side holding 1 part. When put together, it would be seamless. Then, both sides would leave their handprints on the other part of the token. In this way, they could avoid the possibility of counterfeiting. Little friend, if there are more alchemical pills like this in the future, why don't you bring them to my Spiritual Treasures Pavilion to auction? We can still discuss the handling fees, Jia Bo Yun said. All right. Ling Han agreed decisively. Ling Han and the others left the Spiritual Treasures Pavilion. As for that Fan Dongping, he naturally would not have a good ending. There was no need for Ling Han to worry about that. Even if he was a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist, when it came to a sum of over 100 million, he would not be able to escape death. Who asked him to be so greedy? It was getting late, so Ling Han brought Lu Yutong and Hu Niu to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. The 3 of them strolled around the streets slowly. Hu Niu ran around everywhere trying out lollipops, cotton candy, anything new. In this way, when they arrived at the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, the sky was already completely dark. Young Master Ling, this way please. Yun Shuang was already waiting inside, and when she saw Ling Han's figure, she immediately came out to greet him. They arrived at a side courtyard. When Yun Shuang pushed open the door and entered, she saw Lady Yin supporting a young man as she came out to greet them. Lady Yin said, Young Master Ling has graced us with your presence. Please forgive me for not going out to greet you. Ling Han glanced at her and said no matter, it was not convenient for Lady Yin either. I understand. This should be your son, right? He has been unconscious for a few years, and his body is still very weak. Thank you for your understanding, young Master Ling, Lady Yan said with a smile. She then said to the young man beside her, Tunner, this is your savior. Quickly greet him as Big Brother Ling. Big Brother Ling. The young man immediately called out. His face was very pale and his voice was weak. Young Master Ling, this is my son. His name is Yan Tianzhao. Lady Yan introduced him to Ling Han, then glanced at Lu Yutong. She could not help but smile, and said, Young Master Ling is really lucky to have gained the favor of a noble daughter of the Lu clan. Lu Yutong's pretty face instantly flushed red. But her impression of Lady Yan increased greatly. She liked hearing these words. Come, sit inside first. Lady Yan led them in. There was already a table of delicacies laid out in the courtyard, and there were 8 beautiful female attendants carrying lanterns in the surroundings. The light was faint, and there was a different kind of charm to it. They sat down according to the host and the guest. Lady Yan naturally sat at the head of the table. On her left was her son, and below her was Yun Shuang. Meanwhile, Ling Han sat on Lady Yan's right. On his side was Hun Yo, and then Lu Yutong. Big Sister Lu, you are really beautiful, Yan Tianzhao praised. A faint blush appeared on his pale face as if he was shy. If a grown man said such words, Lu Yutong would definitely not be happy. However, Yan Tianzhao was only a 15 or 16-year-old young man, and it was said in front of Ling Han, making her feel extremely happy. Her impression of this young man also increased greatly. Of course, this was the kind of affection that an older sister had for a younger brother. Ling Han only smiled slightly. His gaze swept over Yan Tianzhao, and a chill actually rose up in his heart. This was not fear but disgust, extreme disgust. It was as if there was an extremely evil soul hidden in this young man's body, causing him to dislike him uncontrollably. He turned to look at Hun Yo, and saw that when the little girl's gaze swept over Yan Tianzhao, her small face would involuntarily stiffen, and she would grit her teeth slightly. Obviously, Hun Yo had also sensed his evil. Ling Han could not help but sink into deep thought. The effect of the permanent pill was to awaken a person who was in a deep sleep. The key now was, why had Yan Tianzhao fallen into a deep sleep in the first place? From what Lady Yan and Yun Shuang had revealed, Yan Tianzhao should have been in a deep sleep for as long as 10 years. At that time, did he fall into a deep sleep because of some illness, or did he commit some great evil that caused his soul to be bound by some elite, forcing him to remain in a deep sleep? This was the question. Chapter 163. None of them wanted to make a move because senior brother Ma had already used up a strength talisman. This thing was very valuable, and it wouldn't be much less than the value of a fire-eyed bull. So, even if they managed to take down this fire-eyed bull, the bulk of it would definitely go to senior brother Ma. How much could the others get? Who would want to risk their lives for a mere few hundred taels of silver? But they had no choice. Senior brother Ma was glaring at them fiercely. Whoever didn't make a move would definitely be killed by senior brother Ma first. There was no law here. Everyone could only brace themselves and make a move. But each of them was even more careful. They didn't dare to be rammed by this bull, or be sprayed by the fireball. Otherwise, even if they didn't die, they would lose half their lives. Although they were weak, they could at least divert some of the fire-eyed bull's attention. Senior brother Ma took advantage of this opportunity to make a move. Pung pung pung, the great battle started once again. Senior brother Ma was now able to match the fire-eyed bull. Adding on the fact that he had close to 10 helpers, he naturally had the upper hand. After being hit by senior brother Ma's rod on its waist and back, the fire-eyed bull revealed a look of fear. It wanted to run. But senior brother Ma and the others had paid such a huge price. How could they allow this prey to escape? Naturally, they stopped it with all their might. Not long after, the fire-eyed bull was riddled with wounds. This demonic beast also knew that it couldn't escape. Instead, it revealed a fierce expression and emitted a resolute aura. It was going to risk its life. The fire-eyed bull has an innate secret technique, 10 directions incineration. It explodes the source of fire power in its body in one go. And its destructive power is extremely terrifying. But this will also cause the fire-eyed bull's source of firepower to collapse, and it may never be able to recover, Ling Han mumbled. Hun Yo sat with a serious expression, continuously nodding her little head as if she understood what Ling Han said. But Senior Brother Ma and the others obviously didn't know that the fire-eyed bull had such a powerful technique, and they all surrounded it to attack. Everyone put in more effort. This demonic bull is almost at its end. Although the bull's eyes are the most valuable, if it gives birth to a calculus bovis, then it'll be even more valuable. Attack with all your might. If anyone dares to slack off, I'll make him regret it later. Under the strict orders of Senior Brother Ma and the others, everyone could only increase the intensity of their attacks, creating more opportunities for Senior Brother Ma to attack. A raging flame suddenly spewed out from the fire-eyed bull's body, shooting out in all directions. It was as if thousands or tens of thousands of fireballs were shot out at the same time. Aside from retreating, there was no way to dodge. But the speed at which the flame spewed out was too fast. Only Senior Brother Ma and the others had a high cultivation level, and managed to escape the range of the flames in time. The others were all burnt to ashes by the flames. Even so, there were many places on Senior Brother Ma and the others' bodies that were charred with patches of black and charred. They were in an extremely sorry state. When this powerful technique was unleashed, the fire-eyed bull instantly didn't even have the strength to stand, collapsing onto the ground with a pong. Damn it. Senior Brother Ma cursed and cried out in pain. I'll have to waste a lot of medicinal pills to heal my wounds again. This time there's really almost no profit. In any case, we've taken down this fire-eyed bull, another person said with a smile. He walked up and stabbed his sword into the fire-eyed bull's head. This fire-eyed bull's 4 limbs instantly spasmed, but very quickly stopped, ending its life. However, there's still one more person to deal with. Senior Brother Ma raised his staff and walked towards the large tree where Ling Han was. A cold smile appeared on his face, and he said, "Brat, did you think I didn't notice a rat like you?" When he walked over, he didn't hide his tracks, and even talked for a while with the others. The people in the surroundings would naturally notice him, so what was there to be proud of? So many people have died and you still think you can escape? Senior Brother Ma sneered, and brandished his staff to strike. Pong! The metal staff smashed onto the trunk of the tree, and the tree was instantly snapped in half. The gigantic trunk toppled over, causing the ground to tremble slightly. Ling Han leapt up, and landed on the ground not far away with Hunyo in his arms. A cold glint appeared in his eyes, and he said, "There's no enmity between us, and yet you want to kill me? Who asked us to be injured? What if you sneak attack us while we're recuperating? Then wouldn't we be in a very passive position? So please die now," Senior Brother Ma said coldly. Ling Han smiled and said, "On what basis are you guys so confident that you've definitely got me?" Ha 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 ha. Senior Brother Ma and the other two laughed loudly. You're only in the first layer of element gathering tier, and you still want to cause trouble? As expected, his current state was really attracting too much hatred. Ling Han shook his head and said, "I really don't want to act cool, but I've decided to eat you 3 pigs. Impudence." One of them shot out, and the long sword in his hand shone with a cold light as it sliced towards Ling Han. He was in the first layer of Gushing Spring tier, and was even heavily injured, but against someone in the first layer of Element Gathering tier, he would definitely be able to kill him with a single strike. Naturally, there wouldn't be any accidents. Thus, Senior Brother Ma and the other person stood there with smiles on their faces. Ling Han moved. Chong, the long sword was unsheathed, and 6 flashes of sword chi shot out. What? 6 flashes of sword chi. Senior Brother Ma and the other person gasped in shock at the same time, but they immediately calmed down. No matter. Although 6 flashes of sword chi was shocking, Ling Han's cultivation level was really too low. Even 10 flashes of sword chi wouldn't be able to make up for the difference of 9 whole cultivation levels. Pew, the cold light was like a wash, and the flesh and blood of that person in the first layer of Gushing Spring tier was actually sliced off piece by piece. When Ling Han's sword chi had completely passed through, the person had also become a bloody mess. Fuck me. Senior Brother Ma and the other person's mouths were wide open, and their eyes were as wide as saucers. This scene completely shattered their worldview. A person in the first layer of Gushing Spring tier was actually instantly killed by a person in the first layer of Element Gathering tier. Who would believe this? Even if they saw it with their own eyes, they still couldn't believe it. You're definitely not in the first layer of element gathering tier. Senior brother Ma said through gritted teeth. Then what's my cultivation level? Ling Han asked with a smile. Senior brother Ma couldn't tell. That aura was definitely that of someone in the first layer of element gathering tier. However, if one were to compare it carefully, it was indeed stronger than a normal person in the first layer of element gathering tier. But even if it was 10 times stronger, it would only be equivalent to the middle stage of element gathering tier. How could he possibly have the ability to instantly kill someone in the first layer of gushing spring tier? No matter what your cultivation level is, you can only die. Senior brother Ma shouted loudly. His strength talisman was still in effect, and he had the power of someone in the late stage of gushing spring tier. This made him extremely confident. Hong! He waved his metal rod in an attack. Because his speed was too fast and his power was too heavy, wherever the metal rod passed, it actually formed a vortex in the air. Ling Han smiled calmly. His feet moved, and his figure instantly moved like a ghost. If senior brother Ma was really in the late stage of gushing spring tier, then Ling Han would definitely break into a run at the first instant. But senior brother Ma had only used the strength talisman to increase his power, and there was not the slightest change in his speed. Moreover, senior brother Ma had suffered a serious injury from the fire-eyed bull's last attack, and his power was greatly reduced. His power did not decrease much under the support of the strength talisman, but his speed was far from his peak condition. How could he possibly hit Ling Han like this? Reading on a cell phone was much more refreshing. Chapter 164. Returning to Huyang University, Ling Han separated from Lu Yutong. He had just returned to his own courtyard when he was nagged by Lu Ru'er. You're such a failure as a landlord, not even preparing food for us, she said angrily. Ling Han's expression became strange, and he said, Don't tell me you two don't know how to cook? Lu Ru'er's eyes instantly widened, and she blurted out, How did you know? I can tell just by looking at your imbecile appearance. Ling Han sighed. This pair of assassin sisters were really failures. They were not good at killing people and did not even know how to cook. They were really too weak. Hung, who are you calling imbecile? Lu Ru'er's expression was instantly filled with indignation. When my cultivation recovers, I'll definitely beat you up. Ling Han could not help but laugh and said, Then why would I still keep you two enemies? I've been short on money recently, so I'll just report the information about these two criminals. I should be able to get quite a bit of reward money. Lu Ru'er's beautiful face instantly paled, and she exclaimed in shock, You're scaring me. Is that so? Ling Han crossed his legs, a profound look on his face. Lu Ru'er was hesitant. She had always lived under her sister's protection, so she did not have to worry about the evil of others. Now that she had to face Ling Han, who had lived 2 lives on her own, she was naturally being played around by him. Come, sing a little song for me. If you sing well, I'll let you go, Ling Han said with a smile. Lu Ru'er finally realized that Ling Han was scaring her on purpose. She could not help but pat her perky breasts, and said, You're really a bad person. But she immediately raised her head and said, Fine, I'll sing a song. However, it's not that I'm afraid of you, but I haven't sung for a long time and my throat is itchy. She began to sing softly, and the melody was mellow, moving one's heart. Ling Han nodded internally. This girl was muddle-headed, but she was quite good at singing. She had really chosen the wrong profession. So noisy. Hunyo was woken up by the song, and glared at Lu Ru'er with displeasure, her ferocious nature on full display. Lu Ru'er was very displeased and said, Such a beautiful voice, and you actually say it's noisy? You really don't have the slightest bit of elegance. Hung. Hunyo glared at her defiantly. The two girls glared at each other, as if they were going to stare at each other until the end of time. Ling Han yawned, got up and walked to the bedroom to sleep. Xiao. Hunyo immediately leapt up and hung onto Ling Han's body. Then she turned around and made a face at Lu Ru'er. What a failure. He couldn't even handle a child. Lu Ru'er pulled at her hair in frustration. She, an assassin, had actually lost to a little girl's gaze? Was she really suited to be an assassin? When he woke up, the sun had just started to rise from the east. Ling Han sat cross-legged and began to cultivate. He had now deliberately woken up earlier to avoid cultivating with Hunyo. This way he wouldn't have to run back and forth. Not bad. I'll be able to break through to level 8 poly in 3 days. Ling Han smiled. What he desired the most now was to break through to Gushing Spring Tier and explore the secrets of the Black Tower. At this time the sun had already risen. Ling Han woke Hunyo up, and though the little girl was very unwilling, she still began to cultivate at Ling Han's request. Hunyo's potential was extremely terrifying. In the future, her achievements might not be inferior to his. Ling Han was preparing breakfast, which made him feel very gloomy. In the past he only had one little girl, but now he had 2 big girls and he still had to cook. There was really no justice in this world. At this moment there was a knock on the main door. Who could it be? Ling Han walked over and opened the door. It was actually Jin Wuji. Why did this guy come? Brother Jin, why are you here so early? Ling Han said with a smile. Jin Wuji smiled bitterly and said, Brother Ling, I want to ask you for a favor. What favor? Ling Han asked, not taking everything on himself. Jin Wuji hesitated for a moment, then said, I wonder if Brother Ling can reserve a seat in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion? Ling Han could not help but look at Jin Wuji strangely. Could it be that this guy had an agreement with Lady Yan? He had just received the Cherishing Flower badge yesterday, and today, someone had already asked him to help reserve a seat in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. Brother Ling, I have no other choice. You know a lot of people and I am really at my wit's end. That's why I have to shamelessly ask for your help, Jin Wuji said with a sigh. Ling Han smiled and said, What exactly is going on? Why do you need a seat in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion? Don't laugh at me if I tell you. Jin Wuji actually blushed. Ling Han said seriously, I definitely won't laugh at you. Jin Wuji organized his thoughts and began to speak. As it turned out, a year ago, he had met the daughter of a small clan in the imperial city. Her name was Zhang Fei Yan, and the two of them fell in love with each other to the point of discussing marriage. However, the Jin clan was a great clan in Yuan City, but in the imperial city it was only equivalent to the level of a small clan. Moreover, this was right under the emperor's nose, so the people here naturally felt that they were superior to others. The Zhang clan was not satisfied with Jin Wuji, their future son-in-law, and had always wanted to separate this young couple. Thus, Jin Wuji had been racking his brains, trying to change the way the Zhang clan treated him. Treating everyone in the Zhang clan to a meal in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion was undoubtedly an extremely good idea, because the threshold to enter the Cherishing Flower Pavilion was too high. If one wanted to reserve a seat, they would at least need to be from a mid-tier clan. But the problem was, he was currently only in poly tier. Even if he had broken through to Gushing Spring tier, why would the Cherishing Flower Pavilion bother with him? In the recent few days, the Zhang clan had the intention of marrying Zhang Fei Yan to the 7th young master of a mid-tier clan. Thus, Jin Wuji really had no other choice, so he came to Ling Han to try his luck. After all, Ling Han had just arrived in the imperial city, and he was already acquainted with Wu Songlin's disciple, so it was even more likely that he would be a guest of Grandmaster Wu. Thus, even if Ling Han could not reserve a seat in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, he could still use Wu Songlin's connections. When he heard this, Ling Han could not help but laugh loudly, and said, I had never thought that Brother Jin was such a sentimental person. Brother Ling, I said I wouldn't laugh. Jin Wuji sighed endlessly, his face filled with distress. Ling Han was still smiling and patted Jin Wuji's shoulder and said, Brother Jin, I cannot reserve a seat in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. But, when Jin Wuji heard the first part of his sentence, he already looked disappointed. But there was another twist at the end, causing his heart to involuntarily beat wildly. Brother Ling, do you have any ideas? I can't reserve a normal seat, but what about a side courtyard? Ling Han said with a smile. Pooh! Jin Wuji instantly spluttered. To reserve a seat in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, one had to have the ability or background of spiritual ocean tier. For example, a direct descendant of a mid-tier clan would be able to reserve a seat in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, but they had to make a reservation in advance, because the business of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion was really too good. If one did not make a reservation in advance, it would be impossible to get a seat. And for a side courtyard, One had to have the ability and background of spiritual pedestal tier to be qualified to reserve a seat. Brother Ling, you're not joking, are you? The pleasant surprise was too great, and Jin Wuji's voice was trembling. Reading on a cell phone was more refreshing. Chapter 165. Don't worry. Ling Han smiled and said, when do you want to invite Miss Zhang's family? When can Brother Ling get a reservation? Jin Wuji asked in return. He naturally hoped that it would be as soon as possible. Ling Han spread his hands and said, any day is fine. If you're in a hurry, tonight is fine. Tonight is fine. Jin Wuji's heart involuntarily beat faster. What kind of concept was that? The 8 great clans and members of the imperial family naturally had the right to reserve a side courtyard of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. But they could not just go as they pleased. They had to make a reservation in advance. Only a few people had this special privilege. The Cherishing Flower Pavilion would always reserve a few side courtyards for emergency use, and they could give them out without a reservation. For example, the 3rd Imperial Prince. He had this special privilege. But what was the 3rd Imperial Prince's status? He was a genius in martial art himself, and possessed the powerful ability of a martial artist in the 7th layer of Gushing Spring tier. He was also one of the successors to the next Emperor of Rain Country, and would become the most powerful person in the future. But what about Ling Han? Could it be that he also had the right to do so? Jin Wuji was really shocked. He knew that Ling Han was very monstrous. At that time, he had charged out like a dark horse and became the champion of the Daiyuan tournament, and had even obtained the full support of 3 black-grade low-level alchemists. But that was only in Yuan City. Now this was the Imperial City. Ling Han had only been here for a few days, and he was already so popular. Comparing oneself to others was really infuriating. Jin Wuji could not help but sigh internally. He had already been in the Imperial City for over 3 years, but aside from the increase in his cultivation level, his own status had not improved in the slightest. Compared to Ling Han, it was really embarrassing. He did not doubt that Ling Han was boasting. He might joke, but he would definitely not boast about this kind of thing. Then tonight it is, Jin Wuji said, unable to conceal the excitement on his face. A small clan like the Zhang clan could not even enter the main doors of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. What more having a meal in a side courtyard? As long as he made this trip, would he still have to fear that the Zhang clan would be so narrow-minded as to object to his marriage with Zhang Fei Yan? Sure. Ling Han nodded. Many thanks, Brother Ling. Many thanks, Brother Ling. Jin Wuji bowed repeatedly, appearing to be incomparably moved. He secretly decided that in the future, no matter what Ling Han needed his help with, he would definitely do his best to help him. He turned around and left. Naturally, it was to inform the Zhang family about the banquet that night. This was extremely exhilarating. Ling Han was comprehending the sword in the courtyard. He had reached a bottleneck. He had been stuck at the level of 6 flashes of sword chi for a very long time, but he had not been able to break through. In fact, even for an outstanding swordsman, being able to cultivate 1 strand of sword chi in 10 years was already extremely impressive. Moreover, the more sword chi one cultivated, the slower one's advancement would be. One could be called a genius of the sword Dao if he could cultivate 10 sword chi in 100 years. However, Ling Han was not satisfied. His starting point was too high, so he naturally could not be compared with normal progress. Previously, he had been discussing the sword Dao with Mo Gao. Mo Gao was a strange genius who had even touched the edge of sword heart, which gave Ling Han a great deal of inspiration. He was able to form 6 flashes of sword chi on the spot, but this also exhausted all his accumulated knowledge, so it would be difficult for him to advance any further in a short period of time. Ling Han sat cross-legged, his right index finger extended like a sword, and continued to dance about, verifying the sword Dao in his heart. Before he knew it, it was already noon. He stopped to prepare food for Hu Niu. The food that he and Lu Feng'er had prepared was completely supplementary. It would already be good if they could eat even 1% of the food. In the afternoon, he continued to study the sword Dao. For Ling Han, the academy could not teach him anything at all. Before he came, he had already made up his mind. This was only to appease Ling Dongxing's heart. The path that he would walk in the future was naturally already laid out. In the evening, Ling Han brought Hu Niu to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. He flashed the Cherishing Flower badge and naturally, there was a servant girl who led him to an elegant side courtyard, asking him about the dishes and wine that he would be serving later. The cold dishes were served first. When Hu Niu saw them, she could not help but feel an urge to eat, and could not help but steal a bite, causing the 8 servant girls to cover their mouths and snicker. Ling Han naturally would not blame her. After all, he did not lack money now. After eating one plate, he would just have to serve another. After about half an hour, under the guidance of a servant girl, a group of 8 people walked in. Aside from Jin Wuji, the other 7 were naturally members of the Jiang clan. They were Jiang Feiyan, her parents, 2 aunts and 2 sons. This is the side courtyard of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. It's so beautiful. In the past, we've only been to the normal rooms of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. Come, Feiyan has found the right person this time. He even managed to reserve a side courtyard of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. That's right, that's right. I heard that only the 8 great clans and the imperial family have the right to reserve a side courtyard. If that's the case, then wouldn't we be on the same level as the 8 great clans and the imperial family? The elders of the Jiang clan were all filled with excitement. The lives of a small clan were carefree, and what they lacked was a rise in status and recognition. If they could have a meal here today, it would be enough for them to boast about it for the rest of their lives. Do you have any souvenirs here that I can hang on my body? Eldest aunt immediately asked the servant girl. If there was, then she would hang it on her body every day, and flash it at whoever she saw. The servant girl was startled. Those who could come to the side courtyard to eat were naturally of high status. She had never been asked such a question before. After a moment's pause, she finally said, "We don't have any." "How could you not have any?" Youngest aunt also came over. "How about you get someone to make one for us?" Right, make one," eldest aunt hurriedly said. Hearing the words of the 2 elders, Jin Wuji and Jiang Feiyan both blushed, feeling extremely embarrassed. Meanwhile, Jiang Feiyan's 2 older cousins kept staring lecherously at the faces of the few servant girls, appearing extremely focused. "Brother Jin." Ling Han stood up and beckoned to Jin Wuji. "Brother Ling." Jin Wuji returned the greeting gratefully. "Haha, many thanks, Brother Jin. You've allowed me to bask in your glory, and allow me to have a meal in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion," Ling Han said with a smile. Jin Wuji knew that Ling Han was doing this to make him proud, and could not help but feel even more touched. He could only nod continuously. Ling Han smiled slightly. Though he had some conflict with Jin Wuji and Jin Wuxiang before, Jin Wuji had already apologized and let bygones be bygones. Afterwards, Jin Wuji had gone easy on Jin Wuji during the Dayuan tournament, and had even led his clansmen to rescue Ling Dongxing. Whether Ling Han needed it or not, this was still a favor. Favors naturally had to be returned. Thus, Ling Han was willing to be a supporting character to Jin Wuji today. "Of course you have to thank my Wuji." Eldest aunt's face was filled with disdain, appearing to be filled with disgust. "I heard that you are Wuji's friend from Dayuan City. You really are a country bumpkin who doesn't know the rules. It's already very polite of me to let you come, but you actually brought a little girl with you." Jin Wuji's expression instantly changed, and he could not help but want to interject. But when he saw Ling Han shake his head at him, he could only forcibly restrain himself. Ling Han did not take eldest aunt's words to heart at all. It went in one ear and out the other. There was no point in arguing with such vulgar people. In any case, he would only meet them once. In the future, he would never be able to meet these people again. Thankfully, it was the first time the Jiang clan members had come to the side courtyard of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, so they were all new to the place. When the dishes were served one after another like flowing water, they could not be bothered to look down on Ling Han, and all began to eat. "Aya!" a servant girl suddenly exclaimed, pointing at eldest cousin of the Jiang clan and said, He touched my butt." Chapter 166. What are you shouting for? Are you a tiger's but that I can't touch? Eldest cousin Zhang Hualian humphed, looking very displeased. After all, touching someone's butt was a despicable act. Even if he considered himself a playboy, He was unwilling to be exposed in public. Quickly kneel and apologize to my cousin. Second cousin Tong Yuan spoke up as well, his face filled with arrogance. We are honored guests of your cherishing flower pavilion. Do you know what it means to be honored guests? Those who are able to enter the side courtyard are at the level of spiritual pedestal tier. We can kill your entire family with just a word. The female attendant's face was filled with shame and anger. However, she was only a weak female attendant. She was obviously at a disadvantage, yet she became the villain instead. The two aunts were indifferent. In their eyes, a mere female attendant was naturally incomparable to a hair on their son's head. So what if she touched someone's butt? It wasn't like she would lose a piece of flesh. Moreover, weren't all the women here for sale? What were they pretending for? Eldest cousin, second cousin. Forget it. Zhang Feiyan spoke up. As a woman, she naturally felt sympathy for the female attendant. But who asked the one who took advantage of her to be her cousin? She couldn't possibly side with an outsider, right? Fei Yin, you will be the daughter-in-law of a great clan in the future. Your status is so noble, you don't need to pity these little bitches. Eldest aunt immediately said to Zhang Fei Yin, her tone filled with lecturing intent. That's right, Fei Yin, you can't be so soft-hearted. As the mistress of a great clan, you have to be cruel and merciless. Youngest aunt also spoke up. Zhang Fei Yin's parents, however, remained silent. In the Jiang clan they had nothing to say, and could not even compare to their two married daughters. In reality it was indeed so. The current clan head of the Jiang clan was Zhang Fei Yan's grandmother, and she doted on her two married daughters the most. Because they had married well, their husbands were all sons of mid-tier clans. Though they were not of high status, they were naturally very confident in front of their relatives from small clans. Every time they returned to their parents' home, they would flaunt their prowess in front of their brothers. As time passed, Zhang Fei Yan's father and mother spoke very little, allowing them to speak to their heart's content. This time Zhang Fei Yan's marriage to a mid-tier family was naturally arranged by these two aunts. They naturally came for Zhang Fei Yan's sake. However, now that Jin Wuji had suddenly become so awesome, and was even able to obtain a side courtyard of the cherishing flower pavilion, the two aunts' attitudes towards him changed greatly. They began to repair their relationship with Zhang Wuji's father, hoping that they would be able to climb up Jin Wuji's high branch in the future. The female attendant was almost in tears from the words of her two aunts. However, the cherishing flower pavilion had its own rules, so she did not dare to cover her face and leave. When Zhang Hualyan saw this, he couldn't help but feel even more lustful, and he said, "Come, sit beside this young master and accompany this young master to drink." Ling Han stood up. He knew that the Zhang family was snobbish and overbearing, but he didn't expect the two juniors to be like perverts. He walked over to the maid, took out a banknote and handed it over. "I'm really sorry, this is a small token of my appreciation. Although it can't make up for the injury to your dignity, please accept it." The female attendant glanced at the banknote, and couldn't help but pale in shock, because it was actually in the denomination of 10,000 taels. One had to know that she was only a female attendant, and her cultivation level was only in the 7th layer of body refining tier. Every month she could only earn 300 taels of silver. Although this was not low compared to 10,000 taels of silver, there was indeed a huge difference. "Young master, I can't accept it," she said with a red face. "Just accept it," Ling Han said with a smile. With a wave of his hand he said, "There is no need for you to serve here. All of you can leave." "Yes, young master." The 8 female attendants all bowed. They naturally knew that Ling Han was the one who could truly make the decision, and they all looked at Ling Han with grateful eyes. When they swept their eyes over the members of the Zhang family, their gazes could not help but be filled with strong disdain and contempt. "Who allowed you to leave? Hurry up and stay." Zhang Hualyan immediately shouted. "That's right, how dare you leave?" Tong Yuan even stood up and made to stop them. Jin Wuji hurriedly stood up as well, and pushed Tong Yuan back down. He said, "Second cousin, let it go." He knew that Ling Han was already displeased. If he allowed Tong Yuan to go and cause trouble, it would be inevitable that Ling Han would explode in front of everyone. The 2 female attendants of the Jiang clan were originally about to explode, but when Jin Wuji also spoke up to let it go, they naturally could only suppress their anger. They did not dare to offend Jin Wuji now. After all, this was a man who could get his hands on a side courtyard of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. Wuji, it's not that second aunt wants to criticize you, but you are good to your friends because you are loyal, but friends are still outsiders after all. How can they be more reliable than your own people? Second aunt pursed her lips and directed the spearhead at Ling Han. That's right, you were kind enough to let your friend come here to see the world, but he actually brought a dirty little girl with him, as if she had never eaten anything in her entire life. Isn't that embarrassing? Eldest aunt advises you to cut off this kind of friend. Eldest aunt said from the side. Neither of them spoke in a low voice, obviously purposely wanting Ling Han to hear them. Jin Wuji jumped in fright. Cut off this kind of friend? Cut off this kind of friend? Do you think you have the right to sit here and eat today? He snuck a glance at Ling Han, and when he saw that he was not angry, he finally calmed down. However, he did not dare to allow these two shrews to continue speaking. He hurriedly said, Come, let's all drink and eat. Uncle Auntie, let me offer you a toast. He directly raised his head and drained the wine in his cup in one gulp. Ling Han knew that this was Jin Wuji apologizing to him in disguise. He smiled calmly. Today was to return Jin Wuji's favor, so he naturally would not easily lose his temper. He wanted to find out if the two female attendants of the Jiang clan were seeking their own death. When the wine was halfway through, they were all a bit tipsy. Eldest aunt stood up and said to second aunt, We've never been to the side courtyard before. Let's take a stroll around. Who knows, we might meet some important people. If we can befriend them, we'll be rich in the future. Right. Second aunt hurriedly stood up as well. This pair of snobbish sisters supported each other as they walked out. However, after a short while they returned, their faces looking as if they were glowing. Guess who we met just now? Without waiting for the others to answer, they hurriedly said, Grandmaster Yuan Chuan. Do you know who Grandmaster Yuan Chuan is? A black-grade middle-level alchemist. He scared you to death. The members of the Jiang clan were really shocked. A black-grade middle-level alchemist was like a tall mountain to them, one that they could only look up to. Hualian Yuan, quickly come with me. Let's go pay our respects to Grandmaster Yuan Chuan. Who knows, if Grandmaster Yuan Chuan is happy, he might concoct a few cauldrons of alchemical pills for us. At that time, breaking through to the polytier would be as easy as turning over your hands, eldest aunt said excitedly. This was the reason why the two of them had returned so quickly. That's not appropriate, right? Grandmaster Yuan Chuan's status is noble. If we rashly go and disturb him, we might anger Grandmaster Yuan Chuan, Jin Wuji immediately said. Ling Han gave him face and did not lose his temper, but what kind of status did Grandmaster Yuan Chuan have? Why would he give him face, much less the Jiang clan? Che, we're high-class people now. Isn't it just concocting a few cauldrons of alchemical pills? Second aunt said casually. You two are fuck you pigs. Jin Wuji shouted in his heart. He had an urge to rush up and violently slap these two people's faces. Chapter 167. They walked a little towards the periphery of the ring-shaped mountain, and sure enough, Yang Ming took out an ancient book from behind a withered tree. The cover was almost completely rotten, and he didn't hide it very carefully. Half of it was even exposed. Obviously, at that time, Yang Ming should have just hid behind the tree trunk, casually stuffed the ancient book over, and immediately left, which was why he hid it so carelessly. Young Master Han here. Yang Ming handed over the ancient book and lowered his head slightly. There was a hint of indignation in his eyes that was difficult to detect. For a normal person, this ancient book was worthless, but for some people, it could be worth more than 1,000 gold coins. Ling Han took it unceremoniously. On the way here, he had also told the other party his name. Benefactor, and so on. It sounded very awkward. He began to flip through the book in front of Yang Ming, without any hesitation. This was indeed a personal record of a predecessor. The beginning part recorded some trivial matters. This person was called Xiao Ding, and he was once a village chief. He managed a village and lived a peaceful life. The ancestors of the Xiao family had lived here for generations, But in Xiao Ding's generation, there had been a change. The entire village had been chased out of the secret realm, but Xiao Ding had used a deceptive trick to stay. He went against the orders of the demon master at that time, and entered the depths of the ring-shaped mountain, wanting to know why they were chased out. Relying on his understanding of this place, he avoided many obstacles along the way, and was able to go all the way deep into the mountain. However, he didn't manage to enter the core area of the deep mountains. A mysterious power infected him, making him feel as if he wasn't himself anymore. He immediately fled, but it was already too late. He only managed to flee to the original village before feeling powerless. He barely managed to record some of what he heard in the deep mountains, and the diary ended there. He should be dead. Xiao Ding's diary described in detail the various restrictions in the deep mountains. This was probably because he was afraid of forgetting, so he recorded it in great detail. Finally, he also made a guess. The Devil Sky Mystery Realm should be suppressing some terrifying existence, and the Central Hall was a backup strategy. Through the method of blood sacrifice, the restrictions in the deep mountains could be strengthened. Perhaps it had existed since a very long time ago, but something went wrong in his lifetime. Since the people in the Mystery Realm had all left, then what was the use of the restrictions? There was only one possibility. Something was being suppressed inside, a source of inauspiciousness. Ling Han closed the diary and sank into deep thought. From now on, this mystery realm was still very stable, so it shouldn't be that something went wrong with the mystery realm itself and was about to collapse. So, why did they evacuate everyone at the time? In the past, a blood zombie had appeared in the Devil Sky Mystery Realm, and Xiao Ding mentioned a source of inauspiciousness in his diary, thinking that something terrifying and evil was sealed here. Were the two related? Back then, was it the appearance of the blood zombie that caused everyone to be forced to evacuate? Mystery realms were opened by shattering void tier elites, but it didn't mean that every mystery realm had such an elite overseeing it. If shattering void tier elites couldn't shatter the void and fight their way into the realm of immortals, they would still die of old age. Perhaps there were a large number of blood zombies deep in the mountains that couldn't be suppressed without the power of the shattering void tier. But there wasn't such an elite in the Devil Sky Mystery Realm, so they could only be forced to all retreat, leaving behind an uninhabited space and using this mystery realm to trap those things. Young Master Han, can we set off? Yang Ming asked cautiously. Ling Han nodded and said, let's go. The three of them set off and advanced forward. After walking for more than half a day, they could finally see a huge canyon in the distance. It was as if a heavenly saber had struck the ring-shaped mountain, forcibly splitting a crack in this huge mountain that seemed to connect the heavens. The fracture that descended from the sky was absolutely terrifying, and Ling Han even felt a sliver of saber intent. In the past, there should have been a supreme elite who struck 4 times, forcibly splitting the ring-shaped mountain into 4 sections. Shattering void tier, it was definitely the shattering void tier. Ling Han said inwardly. In his last life, even he didn't have such great power. Only the legendary shattering void tier would have such great mystical power. Even after countless years, there was still a sliver of saber intent left, unwashed by the passage of time. It was too terrifying. Saber intent could transcend millennia, it was unheard of. However, although the canyon was already in sight, it would still take a long time to reach it. However, since the target had already appeared, they were naturally full of vigor. Ah! A scream was heard in the distance. Obviously another battle was taking place, which was a very common thing here. Shwa, shwa, shwa. From the dense forest on the left, 6 people suddenly dashed out, each of them holding a saber or a sword in their hands, but now all of them looked as if they had seen a ghost. Their expressions were terrified, and they only knew how to run for their lives. Xiao, a black shadow, darted out extremely fast. With a single leap, it had already caught up to one of them, and swung its hand towards the back of that person's head. That person seemed to have lost his courage, and actually didn't even dare to parry. He just scattered his legs and ran, but he couldn't compete with that black shadow's speed at all. Instantly his head was hit, and with a paw his entire head was smashed into mush. A gush of hot blood spurted out. A terrifying and disgusting scene appeared. That black shadow actually pounced on that person, sucking his blood and gnawing on his flesh. Hiss! Blood zombie! Ling Han frowned and naturally thought of that evil thing. Wrong, 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 this isn't a blood zombie but a second-tier bronze-armored corpse. A young man dressed in black walked out from the dense forest. His face was deathly pale without the slightest hint of blood, and it gave people a feeling that he was haunted in broad daylight. He still held 3 iron chains in his hands, all of which were stretched taut as if they were tied to some heavy object. However, they disappeared into the dense forest and couldn't be reached. Thousand Corpse Sect. Ling Han frowned. What you actually know about the Thousand Corpse Sect? The young man in black stared at Ling Han, revealing a strong killing intent. Ling Han snorted and revealed a disgusted expression. The Thousand Corpse Sect was an extremely evil force. The people that came from this sect weren't strong themselves, but all of them would refine the corpses of elites to use as battle prowess. They were called corpse soldiers, and they could command them as if they were their own arms and fingers. Their battle prowess was extremely shocking. They divided the corpse soldiers into 3 major grades: bronze armored corpse, silver armored corpse, and gold armored corpse. Each grade was further divided into first tier, second tier, and third tier. There were a total of 9 grades, which corresponded to the 9 major tiers of martial artists, from body refining tier to heaven tier. Where did the corpse soldiers of the Thousand Corpse Sect come from? Of course, they came from stealing the corpses of martial artists, and the stronger the martial artist was when he was alive, the stronger the corpse soldiers created would be. A third-tier gold-armored corpse could even rival a heaven-tier elite. In order to steal the corpses of powerful martial artists, the Thousand Corpse Sect could be said to be deranged. Not only did they dig up ancient tombs, they even dared to steal the corpses of elites that had just been buried not too long ago. Thus, this sect attracted the disgust of a large number of people, and had once been jointly attacked. Ling Han had originally thought that the Thousand Corpse Sect had already been annihilated, but he'd never thought that an heir would actually appear now. Chapter 168. Which clan are you from? How daring, actually daring to strut around and order Grandmaster Yuan Chu to concoct pills. I'd like to see if you're one of the 8 great clans or the imperial family. 3 middle-aged men stood at the door, all of them wearing disdainful expressions. They came from the Wu clan of the 8 great clans. Because the 8 great clans and the imperial family knew each other very well, they naturally knew that these people were not from one of the 9 great clans. And since they were not, in this rain country, what force could be stronger than the Wu clan? In their minds, these people should have popped out from some rural backwater, and had somehow managed to enter into the side courtyard of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. They were so full of themselves that they even dared to be insolent in front of Grandmaster Yuan Chu. Oui, eldest aunt stuttered, her words stuttering. There was a strong fear in her eyes. She had long since recognized the clan insignia the 3 were wearing, Wu clan, one of the 8 great clans. Though she had married into a good family, it was only a medium force, not to mention that her husband was only a minor character in the clan, unable to speak at all. If he knew that she had offended the Wu clan, he would definitely chop off her head as an apology. The life and death of the 8 great clans was second only to the Tian clan. What about me? Hurry up and tell me, who gave you the guts to actually dare to yell at Grandmaster Yuan Chu? The 3 from the Wu clan pressed on, laughing coldly. Father Zhang almost fainted. He had only heard his 2 sisters casually mention that their request for alchemy had been rejected. Who would have thought that these 2 idiotic sisters would actually dare to be so insolent towards Grandmaster Yuan Chu? This caused his face to turn pale. A black-grade middle-level alchemist was enraged, and the Wu clan of the 8 great clans made a move. The Zhang clan was definitely finished, and no one dared to say anything. Wasn't that right? Who asked them to offend an alchemist first? Alchemists were a transcendent group. Everyone wanted to curry favor with them, but you actually dared to be so rude to an alchemist. If not you, who should be exterminated? 6th brother, 8th brother, go slap their mouths. These 2 bitches' mouths are too smelly. We didn't slap them to our heart's content just now because of Grandmaster Yuan Chu. Go slap their mouths again, a middle-aged man dressed in green said. All right. The other 2 both walked out, grabbing towards eldest aunt and second aunt. Both of them were poly 9-layer experts, and their strength far surpassed the others. Even though the 2 of them wanted to escape, it was impossible for them to do so, and they were immediately caught. Slap, 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 slap. The two shrews with foul mouths were slapped ceaselessly, and in next to no time, their faces had swelled up, and there were even broken teeth that sprayed out. This was when the two of them had held back. Otherwise, if they attacked with their full strength, a mere body refinement tier cultivator would be nothing to them. Zhang Huayan and Tong Yuan didn't dare to make a sound. They hugged each other and curled up into a ball. I'm the daughter-in-law of the Duanmu family. Don't kill me. Eldest aunt cried. Her face, which could still be considered round and smooth, was now covered in blood and tears. She was indescribably ugly. Duanmu family. The green-robed man snorted. When did the Duanmu family become so powerful? I'd like to ask Duanmu Xiang about it. Duanmu Xiang was the current patriarch of the Duanmu family, but from the tone of the green-robed man, it seemed like he didn't care about him at all, causing eldest aunt to feel despair. An idea came to her mind and she hurriedly said, Wuji, Wuji, save me. That's right, Wuji. Since you were able to reserve this courtyard, your status is definitely not lower than his. Bring it up to crush him. Second aunt seemed to have woken up from a dream, and she called out to Jin Wuji. Ha 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 ha. The green-robed man laughed coldly. They actually wanted to use their status to crush him? Who would be so powerful? Jin Wuji felt his entire body break out in a cold sweat. He was only the third young master of the Jin family of Deyuan City. In Deyuan City, this title could indeed crush many people to death, but in the imperial capital, Tui, it was nothing. So you're Wuji? The green-robed man laughed coldly. I'm standing here right now. How are you going to crush me with just your name? My lord, you must be joking. This is really a misunderstanding, Jin Wuji said, clasping his hands in obeisance. These two seniors had too much to drink, and that was why they had so rashly gone to find Grandmaster Yuan Chu. I beg for your forgiveness. Hee, do you know what this shrew called Grandmaster Yuan Chu with? The green-robed man's lips curled up in a mocking smile. Did you hear that, old dog? They actually called Grandmaster Yuan Chu old dog. In all my life, this is the first time I've seen someone dare to call Grandmaster Yuan Chu old dog. The faces of Jin Wuji and the three members of the Jiang clan all paled at the same time, and they almost pounced on these two shrews to strangle them to death first. If they wanted to die, then they should die on their own. Why did they have to drag others down with them? Eldest aunt and second aunt were also filled with regret. One of the reasons why they had been so arrogant was because they had suddenly been able to sit in the courtyard of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, which made them feel as if their status had skyrocketed. But the other more important reason was that they had been drunk. Otherwise, no matter how stupid they were, they would not have rashly gone to ask for alchemical pills, and even insulted Yuan Chu as an old dog after being rejected. But now it was too late. Speechless now, right? The green-robed man clasped his hands behind his back. His eyes swept over them, and he could not help but give a humph and said, You country bumpkins are really arrogant. I have been here for so long, and there is still someone who dares to sit? He had finally noticed Ling Han. Ling Han did not even spare him a glance, and only tried his best to fight for food with Hu Niu. Of course, he was only teasing the little girl, because he did not even have the energy to fight for food. He was already full after a few bites. How dare you seeing me and still dare to sit? The green-robed man glared at him, exuding an oppressive pressure. Ling Han's eyes turned cold, and with a casual flick, the rib in his hand immediately flew out, flying towards the green-robed man. The green-robed man stretched out his hand to grab the rib, but unexpectedly, just as his hand was about to touch the rib, that piece of rib actually miraculously twisted in a different direction, bypassing his hand, and with a paw slammed into his face. Firstly, it was because he had underestimated his opponent, and secondly, it was because of Ling Han's ingenious use of force, which resulted in such an effect. You seek death. The green-robed man roared angrily, and with a sudden leap he pounced towards Ling Han, brandishing his fists to attack. Ling Han's feet bounced off the ground, and he had already bounced backwards. Using the exiting cloud steps, he moved with ease. A mere trash and polytier was actually able to remain so calm under the attack of a gushing spring tier martial artist? The green-robed man's first attack was caught off guard, but after a few moves and still did not manage to take down Ling Han, he could not help but reveal a cautious expression. Withdrawing his hand, he asked, "Brat, who are you? Slap yourself 10 times first, and then I'll talk to you," Ling Han said calmly. Daring to call himself I in front of him, how could he not give him a beating? Arrogant. The green-robed man humped coldly, and once again launched an attack towards Ling Han. Xiao Hunyo leapt out from the chair, and shot rapidly towards the green-robed man, her speed extremely fast. The green-robed man had not taken Hunyo seriously at first, but with this sudden movement, he was astonished. This little girl who was only 5 or 6 years old was actually in poly tier. Did you dare believe it? But he immediately became bold. Since he could not deal with Ling Han, he decided to make an example out of this little girl. A cold smile appeared on his face, and he suddenly shot out a fist, smashing it fiercely towards Hunyo. "You dare!" Ling Han roared angrily. This person could even deal such a heavy blow to a little girl like Hunyo. He was practically inhumane. He hurriedly leapt out, intending to help Hunyo neutralize this punch. Ow! Chapter 169. Ling Han was far away, and just as the cyan-clothed man's fist was about to land on Hunyo, the little girl's figure suddenly flashed strangely, and she appeared behind the cyan-clothed man. Her hands turned into claws, and with a schwa 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 she struck out. Pong, 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 the concentrated sounds of attacks were heard, and the man once again paid the price for his carelessness. His back was continuously struck, and his clothes fluttered like butterflies, accompanied by streaks of blood. Who would have thought that a little girl of 5 or 6 years old would have such power? However, the gap between polytier and gushing spring tier was still too big. Although the man looked very wretched, he had already used origin power to protect his body, so his injuries weren't too serious. His bones and internal organs were all undamaged. Even so, he let out a furious roar of humiliation. A powerful warrior in the second layer of gushing spring tier was actually injured so badly by a little girl. Die! He threw a backhand punch towards Hunyo on his back. Hunyo immediately moved, and circled around to the chest of the green-clothed man. Pong! This punch was not stopped in time and actually landed on his own body. It was so painful that his face turned green, and tears poured out uncontrollably. Ling Han's cultivation level had dropped, but his judgment was still sharp. After a while he relaxed. The little girl was definitely fine. Get lost. The man threw another punch towards his own chest, but Hunyo was like a monkey, and with a slurp she hung onto his thigh again. This time the man finally learned his lesson. He stopped his punch in time, but Hunyo's groin kick landed directly on the fragile peach. Even if he was in gushing spring tier, so what? There were still many weak points on his body, such as the eyes, the dantian, and the root of a man. This kick landed solidly, and the green-robed man instantly used his hands to cover his crotch. His legs swayed, his face flushed red, and he gritted his teeth so hard that they made cracking sounds. One could clearly feel the veins on his neck throbbing, but he was so stunned that he couldn't say a single word. All the men present couldn't help but clamp their legs together, feeling a chill that made them break out in cold sweat. Hunyo leaped back and hung onto Ling Han's body. She turned around and made a face at the green-robed man, looking very innocent and innocent. Pa, the man in green half knelt on the ground, his body twitching. Obviously this kick was really too serious. Who would have thought that a mighty warrior of gushing spring tier would actually lose to a little girl in such a humiliating manner? That's right, this kind of technique would be looked down upon no matter where it was used, but when used by Hunyo it was only natural. A man bullied a little girl, so you deserve to be kicked to death. Moreover, you were in gushing spring tier, while the other party was only a child of 5 or 6 years old. This kind of humiliation had really reached the heavens. Well done! Ling Han gave Hunyo a thumbs up. In the future, if anyone wants to bully you, feel free to kick them. If anything happens, I'll take care of it for you. Hunyo understands. Hunyo revealed a big smile, her smile even sweeter. Fine, there was actually such a way to educate a child. Wasn't he afraid of teaching a bad lesson and raising a female hooligan? You've gotten into big trouble. We're from the Wu clan. Have you heard of the Wu clan, one of the 8 great clans? The other 2 members of the Wu clan said fiercely. They were only in poly tier. Don't think that all of the 8 great clans were elites. Every clan had people with high talent, and there were also people with low talent. Then you two stay as well. Ling Han moved and attacked the two. He was able to match Qi Yongyi, who was in the 9th layer of polytier, when he was in the 4th layer of polytier. Now that his strength had soared to the 7th layer, these two weaklings were nothing. With just one move the two were taken down. Hunyo moved and gave the two a good beating. The members of the Jiang clan broke out in a cold sweat. They were members of the Wu clan, and now they were being beaten like dead dogs. They were done for and no one would survive. Even eldest aunt and second aunt didn't care about crying in pain and hurriedly rushed up, wanting to restrain the two lunatics, Ling Han and Hunyo. Ling Han naturally wouldn't tangle with the two shrews, so he took a few steps back. He'd already beaten them to his heart's content anyways. You're all dead. The green-robed man finally managed to catch his breath. His face was filled with both shame and anger. As a mighty warrior in gushing spring tear, he should have been able to easily take down everyone here, but in the end, he was easily defeated by a little girl. This humiliation would never be washed away. If you don't speak, no one will think you're mute. Ling Han kicked. With a paw, half of the man's teeth fell out, and he screamed in pain again. This time he was truly injured from head to toe. The members of the Jiang clan all looked at Ling Han like he was a madman. In their minds, Ling Han definitely couldn't have a background that surpassed that of the 8 great clans, but he actually beat up a member of the Wu clan. Wasn't this the same as hanging himself? Was he tired of living? Even Jin Wuji felt his limbs turn cold. He knew very well that Ling Han came from Deyuan City like him, and at most only knew a few black-grade low-level alchemists. They'd caused trouble, they'd really caused a huge trouble this time. We don't know you. Eldest aunt and second aunt hurriedly said in a trembling voice. Then they turned to Father Jiang and said, Jiangbo Xian, we'll also make a clean break with you. From now on you're you and we're us. This trouble was caused by you, don't drag us into it. Father and Mother Jiang, as well as Zhang Feiyin and Jin Wuji were all furious. It was this pair of mother and son who had rashly gone to find Grandmaster Yuan Chu, and even insulted him as an old dog. But now this had nothing to do with them. How could there be such shameless people? Not a single one of you can escape, the green-robed man said fiercely. Now he only felt that his lower body was completely numb, and he didn't know if he was crippled or not. If he was really crippled, he would kill everyone here 3 times to vent his hatred. You still dare to speak? Ling Han was very surprised and raised his foot again. No. The green-robed man was shocked. This young man was practically a madman. He clearly knew that he was a member of the Wu clan, and still dared to attack him. Moreover, he was extremely ruthless. He was really scared. Who asked him to be so heavily injured now, and not be able to display the battle prowess he should have? But he swore that he would definitely crush Ling Han's bones and scatter his ashes. You're not honest in your heart, Ling Han said slowly. Hunyo immediately bared her teeth and roared, showing her ferocious nature. The green-robed man instantly felt his anus clench. Compared to Ling Han, he was actually more afraid of Hunyo. This little girl was practically like a demonic beast. Humans could still reason with them, threaten them, and even tempt them with benefits, but what about demonic beasts? No matter what they said, it would be useless. Just give up. Even if I beat you half to death later, the adults in your clan will only say that I did a good job, Ling Han said calmly. Bullshit. The green-robed man immediately said disdainfully in his mind. Even the members of the Jiang clan shook their heads internally. This was something that was completely impossible, unless Ling Han was the illegitimate son of the current reign emperor. In that case, it was indeed possible that the Wu clan would lower their heads. Zifeng, have you still not settled the matter? It was at this moment that an aged voice was heard from outside. Chapter 170. Elder Qian Feng. The azure-clothed man and the other two called out at the same time, their voices filled with grief and indignation. Wasn't that so? It had always been them who bullied others, but today they were trampled on the ground and beaten violently. It was simply driving them crazy. 2 people appeared at the door. One was an old man in his 60s, dressed in a red robe. His hair was jet black and his face was very smooth. He did not look old at all. The other person's age was similar, and there were 2 silver badges hanging on his chest. Anyone with a bit of common sense would know that this represented the identity of a black-grade middle-level alchemist. Obviously, one of them was the Wu family's elder, Wu Qianfeng, and the other was Master Yuan Chuan. Greetings, Grandmaster Yuan. Greetings, Lord Wu. The members of the Jiang family hurriedly went up to greet them. To them, these were truly important figures. Normally, it was difficult to even see one of them. Now that 2 of them had arrived, their legs began to tremble. When Yuan Chu saw eldest aunt and second aunt, he could not help but snort, revealing a very displeased expression. These 2 shrews actually dared to call him an old dog. To an alchemist who had always had his eyes on the top of his head, this was a great humiliation. This old man can't afford to accept your courtesy, he said coldly. Actually, with his status, he wouldn't stoop to the level of these 2 shrews. However, there was simply too much hatred in his heart. If he didn't mock them, he wouldn't be able to vent his hatred. From this aspect, it could be seen that eldest aunt and second aunt's battle prowess was still very strong. They could actually cause a black-grade middle-level alchemist to lose his composure. This was something that not many people could do. Master Yuan, we were blind. Please be magnanimous and let us go. Eldest aunt and second aunt both knelt on the ground, crying and slapping themselves. Yuan Chu, however, remained unmoved. Didn't you say that there was someone here who could suppress me? Now that I'm here, call him out. Jiang Chen's father and the others were all stunned. They thought to themselves, so this is how eldest aunt and second aunt escaped. She's really despicable. She's dragging us all down with her just to survive temporarily. Wu Qianfeng turned to the azure-clothed man, his face ashen. What's going on? You can't even capture a few people? A Wu family disciple had actually been beaten to the point that his teeth had fallen out. This was a complete provocation to the Wu family. The azure-clothed man and the other 2 lowered their heads in shame and indignation. How could they say that they had been defeated by a little girl? Which expert is here? Since you've taught a lesson to my unfilial descendants, why don't you show yourself? Wu Qianfeng's gaze swept over them. The strongest among them was only at the 9th layer of Pali, and it was impossible for them to defeat Wu Zifeng. It's him. The azure-robed man pointed at Ling Han. Him. Wu Qianfeng's face was filled with astonishment. This was just a 7th layer Pali realm junior. Had Wu Qianfeng gone crazy? It's him. The azure-clothed man gritted his teeth as veins bulged on his forehead. He used sinister methods to defeat me. Elder Qianfeng, please take action and punish him severely. Oh. Wu Qianfeng stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes were fixed on Ling Han, and there was a faint killing intent in them. Regardless of whether Ling Han had used sinister methods or not, since he dared to make a move against a member of the Wu clan, he had already been sentenced to death. Brat, are you going to kill yourself or do you want me to do it? He asked calmly. Sensing the old man's killing intent, Hunyao immediately threw herself onto the ground. She raised her head slightly and bared her teeth, revealing a guarded expression. Hunyao. Yuan Chu's attention had been attracted by eldest aunt and second aunt all this while, so he said a few more words. These 2 shrews were indeed very powerful, to be able to make a great alchemist so focused on them that he completely ignored the others. Only now did he suddenly notice Hunyao. Hunyao was here. Could it be? He hurriedly swept his gaze around, and when he saw Ling Han, a smile instantly appeared on his face. He jogged over to greet Ling Han, bowing from a distance and said, I did not know that young Master Han was here. Yuan Chu has been disrespectful. Pooh. Seeing this scene, everyone choked. Hey, you're a black-grade middle-level alchemist. How noble is your status? Why do you look like a bootlicker? You're smiling so much that you're about to blossom. Fuck, too flattering, it's really embarrassing. Eldest aunt and second aunt both gaped, their tongues hanging out, and their eyes almost popping out of their sockets. Wasn't this a country bumpkin? Wasn't he here to freeload with Jin Wuji? Why did even Grandmaster Yuan Chu have to respectfully address him as young Master Han? What was going on? Wu Qianbo was also shocked. He clearly knew what a black-grade middle-level alchemist represented, but he actually acted so respectfully in front of Ling Han. This was practically unbelievable. Even if the patriarch of the Wu clan was here, Yuan Shu would definitely not be so submissive. Alchemists were an extremely proud group. If one wanted them to lower their heads, then the only way was to surpass them in alchemy. But the problem was, how old was Ling Han to be able to make others believe that he could surpass Yuan Shu in alchemy? All of a sudden, the surroundings were completely silent. No one could say a word. What kind of people have you befriended? Ling Han frowned, obviously very displeased. Wu Qianbo was about to explode in rage. This was practically calling a monk bald in front of him. If Ling Han was the elder of some great clan, then he could accept it, but a youth who was still wet behind the ears actually dared to mock him in front of his face? How could he endure this? Yes. It's all Yuan Shu's fault for not realizing his mistake. Please forgive me, young Master Han. Who would have thought that Yuan Shu would only admit his mistake repeatedly, his attitude becoming more and more humble, as if he was Ling Han's alchemy apprentice. Wu Qianbo forcefully swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. Was Yuan Shu an idiot? Of course not. Was Yuan Shu's status high? Of course it was. But even Yuan Shu had to be so careful and respectful, so how terrifying was Ling Han's status? Wu Qianbo was not a person who acted on impulse. He immediately reevaluated the situation. Forget it. Ling Han waved his hand, then looked at Wu Qianbo with a grin and said, I was the one who beat up a member of your Wu clan. What do you want to do? What do I want to do? Of course I want to execute him in front of everyone, to serve as a warning to others. This was Wu Qianbo's initial thought, but how would he dare to think of such a thing now? Because Yuan Shu was already looking at him with an unfriendly gaze. Obviously, if he dared to say anything harsh, Yuan Shu would dare to turn against him. He sighed internally, knowing that he had already lost this battle before it had even been fought. There was nothing he could do. Who asked him to ask Yuan Shu for help? Moreover, even if he had no desires, his clan would definitely not offend a black-grade middle-level alchemist. Young Master Han must be joking. These guys must have offended young Master Han. Even if young Master Han did not make a move, I would still teach them a good lesson, Wu Qianbo said with a laugh. His expression was natural, and there was not the slightest bit of grievance on his face. What an old fox. Chapter 171. You guys leave first, Ling Han said to Qi Yongyi and the others. What about you? Lu Yutong asked hurriedly. Ling Han smiled and said, I can't leave for now, but I'll catch up to you guys very soon. Ha, you won't be able to leave. Rong Huanxian's hoarse voice came from the copper coffin. All of you will die and become food for my corpse soldiers. Ling Han pretended not to hear, and said, I won't have any worries if you guys leave. Qi Yongyi and the others nodded and left. For some reason, they believed Ling Han's words without a shred of doubt, as if this youngster had an indescribable charisma that made them involuntarily do as he said. Previously, they supported Ling Han wholeheartedly, partly because of this charisma. Kill them, don't let a single one escape. Rong Huanxian shouted from within the copper coffin. That silver-armored corpse immediately abandoned Uncle Fu and stood guard at the exit, slaughtering those who wanted to escape. It had the battle prowess of the spiritual ocean tier, even reaching 9 stars and above. Although it couldn't use martial arts techniques, it had a sharp weapon like corpse poison, so its destructive power wasn't reduced in the slightest. It was even more effective against people of lower tier, killing a large group with a single sweep. Stop it! A few spiritual ocean tier warriors shouted. The juniors here were all people of their country, and this involved the issue of blood sacrifice. If they provoked the blood zombie, then it would really be a big problem. The 8 spiritual ocean tier warriors teamed up against that silver-armored corpse, and said, everyone, leave the main hall immediately. If you meet other people on the way, tell them to go to another central hall. With these 8 people blocking the silver-armored corpse, the others finally got a chance and dashed out of the hall. Go. Ling Han said to Lu Yutong. If you don't go, I won't go either. Lu Yutong said through gritted teeth. Quite affectionate. Ao Yangming sneered. Uncle Fu, take them all down. Yes, young master. Uncle Fu hurriedly nodded and looked coldly at Ling Han, pressing forward step by step. Time to go, hold me. Ling Han called out to Lu Yutong while carrying Hu Niu in one arm. Lu Yutong blushed, but hugged Ling Han without hesitation. Smelling the strong manly scent on his body, she felt her heart thumping wildly, about to jump out of her throat. Go. Where do you think you're going? Uncle Fu sneered. He already blocked the way out of the hall. Did Ling Han still want to barge through? Ling Han sprinted, and in a few steps he arrived at the edge of the hall. There were no walls on all four sides, and he could jump out from any side. However, only the direction of the entrance had steps. As for the other three sides, that was a height of over 1,000 meters, and below was a hard stone plaza. Jumping from such a height would only lead to death. Uncle Fu, bring them back. Ao Yangming hurriedly shouted. If Ling Han died, then he died. But if a beauty like Lu Yutong fell to a bloody pulp, how unfortunate would it be? This old servant understands. Uncle Fu scuttled to the edge of the hall and reached out with one hand, turning it into a giant hand of origin power, grabbing towards Ling Han at an incredible speed. A spiritual ocean tier elite was a spiritual ocean tier elite after all. With a wave of his hand, he caught up to Ling Han. Seeing this, Lu Yutong gritted her teeth and revealed a determined expression. Ling Han saw it and hurriedly said, "Don't act recklessly." However, Lu Yutong acted as if she didn't hear, and pushed towards Ling Han with both hands. Ling Han fell faster, and she crashed towards that giant hand. Ding, her long sword was unsheathed and slashed towards that giant hand of origin power. However, the difference in strength was too great. That giant hand of origin power only had to clench, and Lu Yutong was caught. With just this obstruction, Ling Han had already surpassed the limits that the giant hand of origin power could reach, and had no choice but to grab Lu Yutong and roll her back. Uncle Fu casually threw Lu Yutong to the ground and said to Ao Yangming, "This old servant is useless, please punish me, young master. No matter, that guy is definitely going to die anyways." Ao Yangming sneered. He only cared about Lu Yutong. So what if Ling Han was smashed into pieces? The ancient record wouldn't be broken anyway, so he could just pick up the corpse later. However, his face immediately revealed a shocked expression because Ling Han, who was falling rapidly, actually opened a large umbrella. The speed of his fall immediately slowed down, and he floated in the air like cotton, falling towards the distant forest. This time, even if Uncle Fu immediately ran out of the palace to chase, with this detour, Ling Han would have long since fallen into the forest. That was a natural barrier, so how could he find Ling Han? Damn it! He immediately roared, but when his gaze swept over Lu Yutong, a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. With this hostage in hand, he wasn't afraid that Ling Han would keep hiding and not come out. In the distance, Ling Han's gaze seemed to be able to penetrate space, staring at Ao Yangming's face. At this moment, a strong killing intent arose in him. Ao Yangming couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart, but immediately thought that with his status, he had no need to be afraid of such a brat, and instantly straightened his back. Ling Han mouthed a few words, and without another look, his figure had already descended into the forest. You risked your life for him, but he didn't even spare you a second glance, Ao Yangming said to Lu Yutong. At this time he obviously wanted to sow discord. Lu Yutong was unmoved, and only sneered at Ao Yangming, saying, "He'll come and save me." "Oh, why would he come and save you?" Ao Yangming sneered. "A mere element gathering tier." Lu Yutong didn't say anything else, as if she was looking down on Ao Yangming. Ao Yangming was furious, and was about to flip out when he heard Uncle Fu say, "Young master, it's dangerous here, let's leave first." Ao Yangming could only nod and say, "Let's go." The group left the main hall, and could still hear the sounds of the 8 spiritual ocean tier warriors and the silver-armored corpses' fierce battle from afar. They couldn't help but look worried. Ling Han put away the blood-sucking origin gold and walked forward with a gloomy expression. Hunyo felt the hidden rage beneath Ling Han's calm expression and bared her teeth in anger, as if she was going to bite someone. "I have to save the little female attendant, but if I go like this, it's equivalent to throwing my life away," Ling Han thought as he walked. "The only way is for me to break through to Gushing Spring tier. At that time, I'll be able to get a chance for Black Tower's power boost, and possess the power of the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Then, I'll find a chance to activate 10,000 techniques return to 1 and kill that old dog in one strike. 10,000 techniques return to 1 practiced to the extreme, was to combine 10,000 sword strikes into one strike, which was enough for Ling Han to kill someone of a higher tier. However, the origin power required for this move was too terrifying, and Ling Han couldn't possibly execute it now. However, if he had the power of the spiritual ocean tier, then it definitely wouldn't be a problem. No matter what, I have to break through to gushing spring tier. Ling Han made up his mind, found a hidden spot in the dense forest, and began to accumulate the last bit of power. The origin nucleus in his dantian hadn't reached its limit yet, but it would need at most 3 days. Now that he was going to attack with all his might, it was possible that he could reach the true limit of element gathering tier within 2 days. 2 days, he only needed 2 days. Chapter 172. Ling Han did not take it to heart either. There was a hint of joy in his eyes that others could not detect. Wu Qianbo had not been bitten by a snake, but by some kind of treasure. Of course he could not be sure now, but he had a relatively high degree of confidence. Come, change your position and lay your leg flat, Ling Han instructed. Wu Qianbo hurriedly sat down and placed his left leg on another chair. Then he looked at Ling Han anxiously. A great alchemist like Yuan Chu would definitely not speak carelessly. Thus, if he said that Ling Han's alchemy level was above his, then it must be so. Though this was very shocking, and he really could not believe it. Now, everyone else had become the background, and their eyes were all on Ling Han, this youth who was unbelievably young. Ling Han did not feel uncomfortable at all. In his last life, he had long been used to being the center of attention. Now, he only wanted to confirm his thoughts. He stretched out a hand and continuously knocked on Wu Qianbo's leg. After every few knocks, he would stop to observe. After a while he smiled confidently and said, "Old Wu, I'm going to treat you. However, it will be very painful. Don't worry, young Master Han. I am a martial arts practitioner, and have tasted all kinds of hardships. Young Master Han, feel free to do as you please. I'll hold on." Wu Qianbo was just speaking passionately when he suddenly let out a scream. A crimson flame appeared on Ling Han's hand, turning into a sharp blade that was currently burning Wu Qianbo's skin. Yuan Chu watched from the side, and sighed emotionally. Young Master Han is really blessed to actually be able to fuse with a strange fire. I'm so envious. In front of Ling Han, he naturally did not need to pretend to be some kind of expert. Strange fire. When the others heard this, most of their faces were filled with bewilderment. Only Wu Qianbo's eyes revealed a look of astonishment. He naturally knew what a mysterious flame was. This thing was incomparably rare, and it itself had a great amount of power. If one wanted to fuse with it, even the current Rain Emperor might not be able to do it. Perhaps only that reclusive old monster of the Qi clan would be able to subdue it. Ling Han is only in the Pali realm. How did he do it? Wu Qianbo absolutely did not believe that Ling Han could rely on his own strength to fuse with the deviant flame. If that was the case, it was very simple. Ling Han's sect or family behind him had helped him. To be able to collect a ball of deviant fire and allow a junior to fuse with it, what kind of extravagance was this? At the thought of this, Wu Qianbo could not help but feel grateful towards Yuan Chu. If things had really blown up just now, forget about his treatment. Just the terrifying background of Ling Han alone was not something that the Wu family could go up against. As soon as he thought about it, he let out a blood-curdling scream. He had been distracted just now and had momentarily forgotten about the pain, but it immediately returned, making him so mad that he wanted to beat someone up. Everyone nearby revealed shocked expressions, because they noticed that there were blood vessels bursting out from Wu Qianbo's thighs. However, upon closer inspection, these blood vessels were actually constantly wriggling like thin snakes. Ling Han gave a humph, his fingers continuously pointing, pressing, and pushing. Under the burning of the flames, these thin snakes continuously retreated, gathering around his ankle. Wu Qianbo's thighs immediately recovered their normal color at a visible speed, and the lower it went, the thicker the black color became, as if it was about to turn into a solid substance and surge out. How strange! But Wu Qianbo revealed an expression of great joy. Even an idiot would be able to tell that Ling Han was indeed very skillful. He was slowly forcing the snake poison in his body to the soles of his feet. Only it was very, very, very painful. As an elite of the spiritual ocean tier, Wu Qianbo's endurance was still very strong. At this moment, he could already barely stop himself from screaming, but cold sweat was pouring out layer by layer, and both his legs were unceasingly trembling. At this moment, all the black color had gathered to the soles of his feet. Ling Han drew his sword and said, "Old Wu, now I have already forced the poison to your left foot. You'll be fine after I cut it off. Are you all right?" "All right, your sister, this is one of my feet." Wu Qianbo ridiculed inwardly, but he had previously seen many doctors, and all of them said that he would only be able to preserve his life if his entire left leg was amputated. In comparison, only cutting off one of his left feet was really much better. After all, his life was important, and the longer it dragged on, the more troublesome it would be. "Han, young Master Han, please do as you wish," Wu Qianbo said through gritted teeth. Ling Han drew his sword. Shua, a cold light flashed, and immediately, a streak of black blood splattered out. He did not cut off Wu Qianbo's foot, but instead started to bleed on the soles of his feet. Under the pressure of the strange fire, the black blood continuously gushed out. "It's here!" Ling Han's eyes suddenly lit up. He suddenly abandoned his sword, and stretched out his hand towards the black blood. Then he immediately withdrew his hand. No one noticed that there was an extra item in his hand, because he had just placed it into his spatial ring the moment he touched it. The black blood continued to be discharged, and very soon, Wu Qianbo's left leg had completely recovered to normal, but it still looked a little pale. After all, he had lost a lot of blood. "It's done," Ling Han said. Wu Qianbo sensed for a moment, and a smile involuntarily appeared on his aged face. He hurriedly stood up, clasped his hands and said, "Thank you, young Master Han, thank you, young Master Han." This snake venom had troubled him for many years, and he had taken countless antidotes to no avail. Every day he had to use origin power to suppress it, or else the venom would spread throughout his body and suck his blood. If it wasn't for that, he wouldn't still be in the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. No matter what, he would be able to charge to the 9th layer and have a chance to break through to the spiritual pedestal tier. If the clashing yang pill had no effect, he really planned to give up on this left leg. After all, a living person with a broken leg was much better than a dead person with all 4 limbs. He never thought that Ling Han would so easily solve the problem that had troubled him for almost 10 years. "Amazing. Put away that furry leg of yours, is that good?" Ling Han said in disgust. Now Wu Qianbo's left leg was charred black, and the parts that weren't burned were full of leg hair, which was indeed very unappetizing. Yes. Wu Qianbo was currently very happy, so he didn't mind at all. Ling Han's tone was very rude. "All right, you can go now." Ling Han waved his hands, ordering him to leave. "Yes." Wu Qianbo hurriedly clasped his hands in apology to the members of the Jiang clan, as he picked up the 3 descendants of his clan. Since the poison had been cured, he naturally didn't need to beg Yuan Chu anymore, so he directly returned home. "You can go back as well," Ling Han said to Yuan Chu. "Yes, young Master Han." At first, Yuan Chu wanted to flatter Ling Han a few more times, but when he thought that Ling Han lived in the Imperial City and would definitely come to Tianyi from time to time, he didn't continue pestering him and took his leave. Once the outsider left, all the members of the Jiang clan looked at Ling Han with eyes filled with reverence. Ling Han smiled and said, "What? Don't you recognize me?" "I really don't recognize you," Jin Wuji said with a bitter smile. "Even Grandmaster Yuan Chu and Master Wu have to be so respectful to you. I really don't know what to do. How about I call you young Master Han as well?" "Fuck you." Ling Han laughed loudly. "Are you not treating me as a friend?" Jin Wuji instantly felt a warmth in his heart. Chapter 173. One after the other, they were both Ling Han's friends, but the significance of this was completely different. Even a black-grade middle-level alchemist had to address Ling Han as young Master Han. To be able to become friends with Ling Han, what kind of glory was that? The parents of the Jiang clan, including Zhang Fei Yan, were all overjoyed. Eldest aunt and second aunt, on the other hand, shamelessly approached. Eldest aunt said, "Young Master Han, our Hualien and Yuaner are both good children. They will definitely be good friends with young Master Han." Right, they can be good friends, second aunt said hurriedly. They were really too shameless. Ling Han said calmly, "Do I know you too?" Eldest aunt and second aunt were instantly rendered speechless. If it were a while ago, they would definitely be baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, but now they did not even dare to say a word. They kept sending meaningful looks at Zhang Fei Yan, hoping that she would speak up for them. If their own sons could become good friends with Ling Han, then wouldn't they be able to do whatever they wanted in the imperial city? "You two can get lost," Ling Han said impatiently. How could eldest aunt and second aunt be satisfied? They pretended not to hear anything and decided to cling on. Ling Han smirked coldly and said, "Do you want me to call Wu Qianbo and Yuan Chu back to settle old scores with you too?" Sparing them this once was already for Jin Wuji's sake. Otherwise, he would have given them a tight slap. Eldest aunt and second aunt finally left reluctantly with their two sons. Ling Han sat down and accompanied Jin Wuji and the others to drink for a while, then took his leave. Firstly, the atmosphere was not right. His current status had suddenly soared, causing Jin Wuji and the others to feel extremely restrained. Secondly, he was in a hurry to return and study the item that he had obtained from Wu Qianbo, bringing Hu Niu with him. Ling Han very quickly returned to the academy. Under Lu Ru'er's provocative gaze, he closed the door, and with a thought, an item immediately appeared in his spatial ring. This was a black item, thin and long. The moment it appeared, it actually twisted and shot towards Ling Han like a sharp arrow. The speed of this thing was extremely fast. Back then, even Wu Qianbo had fallen for it, causing his cultivation to stagnate for 10 years. From this, one could see how fast it was. Even the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier couldn't escape. Not to mention Ling Han at the 7th layer of the Pali Xiu. This object had already shot to Ling Han's waist, and was actually about to enter. Humph! Ling Han's expression darkened, and with a bang, a scarlet flame ignited at his waist. "Impudent! Since I was able to force you out, do you think I'll be afraid of you?" That thing kept bouncing, still trying to open a hole in Ling Han's body and enter his body. However, it was obstructed by the strange flame again and again. In the end, Ling Han grabbed it again. Hong! The strange flame soared and burned this object. That thing wriggled and struggled. It actually turned from a slender form into a block, then into a sword, then into a saber. It was incomparably mystical. As expected, its blood-sucking origin gold. Ling Han revealed a smile. Blood-sucking origin gold wasn't a beast, nor was it a living creature, but a type of metal. However, this metal was very strange, preferring to consume blood as if it had a life of its own. As for the specifics, even Ling Han wasn't clear. However, some people deduced that after this strange metal absorbed enough, sufficiently powerful blood, it might really open the door of life and become a completely new life form. The greatest use of this metal was that it could transform at will, and had a wide range of uses. If it was forged into a weapon, it could transform endlessly. In Ling Han's last life, the Setting Sun Saber Emperor, one of the 7 heaven tier elites, had his weapon, the Slashing Sun Saber, forged from blood-sucking origin gold. In the midst of slaughter, the treasured saber would absorb the blood of elites to continuously increase its power. It could almost rival a heaven tier elite, and was extremely terrifying. However, this piece of blood-sucking origin gold was too small, far from being enough to forge a weapon. However, transforming it into a key was no problem at all. Transforming at will meant that it could open any lock in the world. Wasn't that awesome enough? In his last life, Ling Han had only seen blood-sucking origin gold in the hands of the Setting Sun Saber Emperor, but after hearing what Wu Qianbo had said, he had this guess. Otherwise, why would he treat the Wu clan's illness for no reason? Fortunately, he wasn't disappointed. Suck! The strange fire transmitted a vague thought to Ling Han, actually wanting to melt this piece of metal. Ling Han could faintly feel its disgust towards the blood-sucking origin gold. This was really strange. After being melted, would it destroy the blood-sucking origin gold's transformation ability? If it wasn't melted, this fellow wouldn't listen at all. Its bloodthirsty instinct surpassed everything else. It was suitable to be used as a weapon, but definitely not as a key. If it was melted, would it be able to extinguish the bloodthirsty instinct within? Ling Han made up his mind, and allowed the strange fire to continuously refine this piece of blood-sucking origin gold. However, since the blood-sucking origin gold could be used by the Setting Sun Saber Emperor to forge a treasured saber, its resistance to fire was really terrifying. Under the burning of the strange fire, it only turned slightly red, but did not melt. If it weren't for the fact that fire countered metal, he probably wouldn't be able to do anything to it. Then he would slowly melt it. He didn't believe that he wouldn't be able to subdue it. Ling Han sat down cross-legged and operated the origin power within his body, transforming it into flame power and adding it to the refinement of the blood-sucking origin gold. Slowly, this piece of strange metal started to become softer and softer, gradually showing signs of turning into molten iron. The setting Sun Saber Emperor's sun-slashing saber was definitely not at this level. It could almost be said to be invincible. Even the Sword Emperor, who possessed the sword heart and was known to be able to slash the heavens with one sword and the earth with one sword, could not break this saber. This should be because the blood-sucking origin gold had the ability to grow and strengthen itself through absorbing blood. Right now, this piece of blood-sucking origin gold had not absorbed too much blood, which was why it couldn't even do anything to a spiritual ocean realm martial artist. After a whole 10 years, it still hadn't absorbed all of the opponent's blood, which showed just how weak it was. Otherwise, if it had been at the level of the setting Sun Saber Emperor's sun-slashing saber, then not to mention refining it, Ling Han would definitely turn around and run. With his current strength, how could he fight against such a monster? This piece of metal continued to change its shape, and even turned into a small person, making a soundless roar. It made people wonder if this was a piece of metal that had a life of its own. However, living objects could not be stored into spatial rings, so it could be confirmed that the blood-sucking origin gold should be a dead object. In any case, it was very strange. After smelting for a whole day and night, this piece of blood-sucking origin gold finally turned into a puddle of liquid, no longer changing at all. Ling Han's expression became serious, and he began to send his divine sense into the blood-sucking origin gold. If he wanted the blood-sucking origin gold to change according to his own form, he would have to fuse it into his own divine sense, which was equivalent to refining this piece of blood-sucking origin gold like a spirit tool. Ling Han's divine sense suddenly entered an incomparably pitch-black world, and earth-shaking battle cries rang out beside his ears. His vision gradually brightened, and he saw that in front of him, there were currently countless people attacking a giant. This giant was indomitable, and its whole body shone with a metallic luster. It was incomparably hard, because no matter how many thousands or tens of thousands of people attacked it simultaneously with sharp weapons, there were only a few depressions on its skin, which would immediately return to normal. It was as if they had pressed a finger on its body. Ling Han was shocked, because this giant's body was completely formed from blood-sucking origin gold. Chapter 174. With the setting Sun Saber Emperor's abilities, he had only managed to obtain a piece of blood-sucking origin gold the size of a human head, and forged it into the slashing sun saber that he relied on to become famous, becoming the third in the 7 great heavenly realms. But here, a towering giant that was completely formed from blood-sucking origin gold actually appeared. How could this not be shocking? Ling Han had previously guessed that this blood-sucking origin gold could transform into a living being after absorbing enough blood, but he had never imagined that such a terrifying giant would appear. There were millions of martial artists surrounding and attacking the origin gold giant. One after another, their attacks turned into shooting stars, continuously bombarding the giant's body. However, there were very few that could break through its defenses, and even if it did, it would only leave behind an extremely shallow wound. However, the origin gold giant's counterattack was too terrifying. It merely opened its mouth, and with a whoosh, it could swallow up many martial artists. As it chewed, there was a crisp kacha sound, and it actually swallowed people whole. These martial artists could fly, so they had at least advanced into the flower blossom tier, and with Ling Han's observation, some existences were far above this level, completely comparable to his last life. There were even a few powerful martial artists that were above him. An existence of the shattering void tier. At this moment, the scene suddenly stopped. Ling Han's vision changed, and he returned to his room. That part just now should be a memory fragment left behind in this piece of blood-sucking origin gold, but because it was only a fragment, there was only that one part. Ling Han couldn't help but speculate. Under the siege of countless elites, the origin gold giant was finally defeated and destroyed, so its fragments scattered all over the world. This blood-sucking origin gold was filled with the instinct to suck blood. So could it be that it wanted to make a comeback? Although he had only caught a glimpse of the scene, just thinking about how the origin gold giant could attract the siege of so many martial artists, its strength was definitely world-shaking. Even more than one shattering void tier elite had been mobilized. If this thing could still be revived, who in the present world could stop it? It would definitely be the end of all living things. However, this should have happened a very long time ago. Merely in the scene that Ling Han saw, there were hundreds of heaven tier elites, and the number of shattering void tier elites could be counted on one hand. What kind of prosperity of martial art? Wait a minute. Zhang Yufeng and at least 100 or so heaven tier elites had forcefully fought to the death of an ultimate warrior of the shattering void tier. That was not too far from his era. It was as if the martial art had suddenly welcomed a great explosion, and suddenly a great many people had completed a great breakthrough. Ling Han was even more curious. He wanted to know the history of the past, but Rain Country had only been established for a few thousand years. Before that, there seemed to be a gap in history, and no one knew what the world before that was like. Come, I'll have to leave Rain Country and enter into a wider world. Only then will I be able to search for that lost history. Ling Han stopped thinking about it. There was no point in thinking about it now. What could a level 7 Poly do? If there really was a disaster, there would naturally be someone stronger to deal with it. Rain Country was only a small place, so the number of flower blossom tier elites was the highest. Perhaps when one walked out of this place, it wouldn't be strange to hear about the existence of shattering void tier elites. The world was changing and martial art was also changing. There were ups and downs. With a thought, the blood-sucking origin gold instantly changed according to his will. It could turn into a metal thread that was thinner than a spider's thread, or it could turn into a metal sheet that was thinner than paper, and it could even turn into pigs, sheep, chickens, and dogs. However, it was just a minuscule version. Moreover, after being smelted by the strange fire, the blood-sucking origin gold had become even more durable. Probably even a spiritual pedestal tier elite would find it difficult to tear it apart. If it was suddenly wrapped around someone's neck and pulled, even a spiritual pedestal tier elite could suffer a calamity if they were caught off guard. He transformed the blood-sucking origin gold into a bracelet and wore it on his left hand. He walked out of the house, and Hunyeo immediately latched onto him. Rubbing her little head against his chest, she said, "Bad. Ling Han is bad." "How am I bad?" Ling Han asked with a smile. "Not playing with Neo?" The little girl said with a pout. Ling Han could not help but smile and said, "Fine, fine, fine. I'll play with you, okay?" What Hunyeo meant by playing was actually fighting. It must have been taught to her by her tiger mother, when they were still in the tiger's den. Every move and every move, every advance and retreat, they were all the moves of a fierce tiger hunting its prey. However, Hunyeo had a terrifying comprehension ability in martial art. She forcibly changed the moves that were not suitable for humans into ones suitable for her to use. The little girl was like a little tiger, pouncing, slapping, biting, and throwing. They all possessed shocking power. Ling Han could not help but be entranced. Martial art was formless and formless in the first place. Who made the rule that one could not learn from beasts? On the contrary, the ape arm fist, tiger form palm, weren't these all martial arts created by the predecessors with reference to the attack methods of other living creatures? All of a sudden, his thoughts scattered and his mind opened up, boundless and boundless. He entered into a state of sudden enlightenment. Sudden enlightenment was a special state that martial artists yearned for day and night. In such a state, it was possible that one could comprehend difficulties that they normally could not comprehend, and it was possible that they could obtain rapid progress in martial art. However, such a state could only be encountered and not sought. According to speculation, it required the martial artist's consciousness to resonate with heaven and earth, which was extremely mysterious. A martial artist being able to experience sudden enlightenment once in their lifetime was already enough to burn incense and worship Buddha. Moreover, it usually started from the flower blossom tier, because only by leaving the mortal body would one be qualified to merge with the Tao of heaven and earth and resonate with it. In his last life, Ling Han had a total of 3 sudden enlightenment, but they were all breakthroughs in alchemy. The first time he experienced sudden enlightenment was also when he was in the spiritual ocean tier. At that time he was extremely shocked, and did not think that it would appear even earlier in this life. In the surroundings, spiritual chi gathered and turned into multiple dragons that crazily squeezed into his body. His cultivation level immediately began to soar. 7th layer poly, middle stage, late stage, peak stage. He did not have any problem with comprehension of cultivation level. With a slight pause, the door to the 8th layer poly opened for him. Breaking through was just that simple. Ling Han was completely unaware. His mind was soaring in the world of martial art, and one comprehension after another bloomed like flowers. However, when he stretched out his hand to capture them, they immediately turned into broken shadows. Illusory empty flower, so I smell. In the sky there were also flashes of martial art that streaked across like shooting stars, but it was even harder to capture. This was the Tao of heaven and earth, and was not something that Ling Han could comprehend at the moment. If he did not have the foundation of the heaven tier in his last life, he would only be at a loss in such a world of martial art. But now he caught a tiny bit of its profoundness. 8th layer poly, early stage, middle stage, late stage, peak stage. He only used a few hours to complete the accumulation that should have taken many days. He did not even need to take any alchemical pills, as if heaven and earth were creating him. As the saying goes, once one comprehends Tao, one will immediately become a Buddha. This was exactly the case. Of course, Ling Han was far from reaching such a level, but it was already enough to make others jealous. Hong, his figure shook lightly, and he stepped into the 9th layer poly. Ling Han suddenly opened his eyes. At first, there was a hint of confusion, but then he came to his senses and could not help but reveal a smile. He turned his head and saw that Hunyo was also sitting beside him in a dignified manner, as if she was also cultivating. There was actually a hint of solemnity on her small face. Pung pung pung, it was at this moment that there was a hurried knocking on the door. Chapter 175. Yutong Aoyang Ming had just opened the tent when he saw a young man smiling at him, causing him to be shocked. Ling Han, he suddenly exclaimed. Uncle Fu instantly dashed out. His mission was to protect Aoyang Ming. Too late. Aoyang Ming had already fallen into the hands of a young man. A long sword pressed against his throat, and a bloody mark appeared, causing him to stop abruptly. Ling Han was now a genuine gushing spring tier warrior, and he had fused 9 large origin nuclei into a super origin nucleus, then liquefied into a spring's eye, which was many times stronger than a normal first layer gushing spring tier. He already had 5 elements origin nuclei, and his power was 4 to 5 times stronger than people of the same tier. Now it was at least a dozen times more. Even if the gap between each small tier and gushing spring tier was huge, he could at least match the 5th layer of gushing spring tier in terms of power. This was because he had just broken through and hadn't reached the peak of the first layer of gushing spring tier, and didn't take into account the increase in battle prowess brought by various martial arts techniques and methods. In terms of true battle prowess, he definitely surpassed 9 stars. A 9-star gushing spring tier against an element gathering tier warrior. How could it not be a piece of cake? Ling Han. Aoyang Ming gritted his teeth, his face filled with intense humiliation and anger. He originally thought that Lu Yutong had successfully threatened him, but never thought that it was actually a trap set by the other party. In other words, Lu Yutong still chose Ling Han. This knowledge was like a violent slap to his face. Let go of young master, Uncle Fu said coldly, his eyes filled with killing intent. He finally knew that the strange movements he felt previously weren't an illusion caused by his blurred eyesight, but rather the brilliant methods of the brat in front of him, deceiving his eyes. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Old man, don't scare me. I'm timid, and if you scare me, my hand will shake and your young master's neck will slit open. Don't blame me." As expected, his hand shook, and a drop of blood immediately seeped out from Aoyang Ming's neck, turning into a bead line that rolled down. Uncle Fu's face instantly filled with fear, and he said, "Stop. You're scaring me again," Ling Han said, pretending to be resentful, his hand shaking even more violently. Uncle Fu had no choice but to take a few steps back, and said, "Youngster, let's talk nicely." Aoyang Ming, however, was very arrogant, and said, "Ling Han, I'm a direct disciple of the Winter Moon sect. If you dare to touch a single hair of mine, the Winter Moon sect's power will crush you and everyone around you into pieces." Pa! Ling Han slapped Aoyang Ming's head heavily, and said, "Stray dog, where did your sense of superiority come from? Can't I slap you to wake you up?" "Ling Han!" Ao Yongming shouted fiercely. He'd never been slapped on the head in his entire life, making his eyes turn red, wanting nothing more than to tear Ling Han into pieces. "What are you shouting for?" Ling Han snorted, and with a karate chop, Ao Yongming fainted. "Young master!" Uncle Fu exclaimed, but after discovering that Ao Yongming had only fainted, he calmed down slightly, and once again walked towards Ling Han saying, "Let go of young master, and I'll let you guys leave safely." "Old dog, do you think everyone else is an idiot?" Ling Han sneered. "Once I let him go, I'm afraid he'll immediately fall into your evil hands. I guarantee with my reputation." Go, a dog servant, what fucking reputation, stop embarrassing yourself," Ling Han said disdainfully. Uncle Fu trembled in anger. Although he was ordered to protect Ao Yongming and considered himself an old servant, as a spiritual ocean tier elite, he naturally had his dignity. Even in the Winter Moon sect, spiritual ocean tier was a power that couldn't be ignored. "Get out, I'm going to sleep. When I'm full of energy, I'll accompany you, old dog, to discuss the redemption of your young master." Ling Han flicked his hands and said, "You can kneel and rest." Uncle Fu obviously couldn't kneel and rest, but when he saw Ling Han's sword swaying around Ao Yongming's neck, he could only sigh, close the tent, and sit cross-legged on the ground. He was waiting for an opportunity. As long as Ling Han wanted to run, he'd crack open Ling Han's skull the moment he poked his head out, not giving Ling Han the chance to threaten him with Ao Yongming. Inside the tent, Ling Han smiled at Lu Yutong and whispered into her ear, "I'll bring you to a place, don't resist." Feeling Ling Han's warm breath on her neck, Lu Yutong couldn't help but blush. She didn't hear clearly what Ling Han was saying, and only knew to nod her head randomly, foolishly. Ling Han grabbed Lu Yutong's slender hand, and with a thought show, he brought Lu Yutong and Ao Yongming into the Black Tower. Lu Yutong was stunned for a moment, then cried out in surprise. They were clearly in a small tent earlier, so how did they suddenly arrive in such a large space? "Where is this place?" she murmured. "A safe place." Ling Han didn't explain in detail because it was hard to explain, and it involved his previous life. Moreover, the Black Tower's existence was too important. It wasn't that he didn't trust Lu Yutong, but this secret itself was a heavy burden, and he didn't want Lu Yutong to bear it. Lu Yutong nodded. She naturally had absolute trust in Ling Han. Wah! Hunyo flew over, and just when Lu Yutong thought that the little girl was missing her and was about to pick her up, Hunyo elegantly bypassed her and threw herself into Ling Han's arms, using her little head to continuously rub against Ling Han. Then she turned around and made a face at Lu Yutong, clearly showing off her strength. Ling Han was Nyo's. That was her unspoken meaning. Lu Yutong's face couldn't help but twitch. She didn't expect this little girl's jealousy to be so strong. Ling Han patted Hunyo's head and said to Lu Yutong, "It's all thanks to Nyo that I was able to find you so quickly. You have to thank her properly." Hunyo was even more pleased with herself, and grinned widely at Lu Yutong. Lu Yutong could only feel speechless. She felt that she had encountered a very strong opponent, because Ling Han might be on guard against anyone, but he would not be on guard against a little girl. The little girl could act like a spoiled child to her heart's content, and stick to Ling Han all day long. This was an advantage that neither she nor Li Sichan had. Moreover, the little girl had obviously treated Ling Han as her private property. Just now, it was obviously an action of protecting her food. Her jealousy was beyond reason. "You go and rest first, I have to interrogate this guy." Ling Han picked up Ao Yongming, who was thrown to the side. This ingrate obviously had to die, but he still wanted to ask some things about the Winter Moon sect. In the outside world, Uncle Fu suddenly frowned, because he had not heard any movement in the tent for a long time. He couldn't help but listen carefully, and his expression immediately changed drastically, because he couldn't even hear the sound of breathing or heartbeat. He hurriedly leaped out and directly pounced into the tent, but the small tent was empty, without a second figure. How was this possible? Uncle Fu's face turned ashen. Could it be that the brat had grasped some kind of teleportation ability, and had already escaped with Ao Yongming?